Laura.
Got 7 minutes.
Okay, just a reminder, you guys are live right now. So, you're being recorded and it's out on YouTube and you're live.
So you're going out 925.
When you see that that's red,
No more talk about
Right between TCC.
Yeah, no more of that.
Road over there.
I've picked up people talking about their health and things like that, things that you don't really want to publish and.
Right.
Hey Joey, thanks for coming. Yeah, good to see you. How are things going? Good.
Hey, we're not gonna put Backstreet pages on the June 9th. Okay. Try to tell me, so we'll make sure y'all have them before. Hey.
Glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, man. I missed you last time.
It's just not the same without you, Wayne.
Huh?
It's not the same without you.
Well, you don't wanna know where I was.
You in jail again?
We're live.
He pleads a fifth on that one, don't you?
No.
Pleads a fifth on that one.
Yeah. Oh, that's a different one than
Yep.
the one that I got emailed.
One more like that. Give me a thumbs up, though. Okay.
Thanks for coming, Jamie. Thanks for coming, you guys. I don't know, they're invited. Invited everyone, even all the way to the anyone that has a permit.
Did you get this?
There's one group of people that June Springs invited.
But I might.
Sent them the link.
I didn't get that.
I hope Carrie's gonna be here.
You said it was.
Round Jamie Bridge.
And be great designs.
Just a reminder. I'll go ahead and start this meeting. Chairman Fabic and members of the commission, I'm Carrie McCool for Development Services staff. Thank you for having me here this evening. We have a packed agenda tonight, And the focus of our discussions is the sign code. Lots of fun stuff. So I'll be going over the projects. We'll talk about the importance of signage. We'll kind of go over the update methodology. The city has had sign regulations in place for quite a number of years. Then we'll talk about some of the key highlights of the changes. And that will really include the discussions that we have had, some of the big discussions we had in a public meeting on February 13th, was our last meeting. And then what we'd like to do is open it up to the public. We have some members of the public here, so we're so excited to have you and industry leaders. And so we'd like to hear from them. And then we'll take it back to the commission for you to have some discussion, and then we'll go ahead and close the meeting. Does that sound like a
Sounds great.
good plan? Okay, so let's get this started. So, one of the things with updating the regulations is we need to make sure that we have the vision for the community secured. We started this project updating the comprehensive plan, and so that document is our guiding document. It's basically our roadmap, right? Tells us where we want to go and what we need to do to get there. So we completed that update in February of 2017. So now it's time to roll up our sleeves and implement that vision in the plan. And part of that is updating our regulations. So the sign regulations is just one part of that. We're updating the zoning and the subdivision regulations and annexation and all of those good things. So we are here now. So this is one of the initial steps. I'd like to take one moment to thank the Department of Local Affairs. They provided matching grant funding for us to complete this great work and work with your community. So thank you, Department of Local Affairs. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of signage. Signs are really powerful indicators of a community's character, of economic prosperity. I thought this fabulous Las Vegas sign was really appropriate. When you see the sign, that's an indication of what Las Vegas represents in their character and their economic prosperity. Signs play a very significant role in supporting the local economy. Really super important. Well, that is super important. We also need to look at what happens when a community has maybe an outdated sign code, or they have a proliferation of like abandoned signs or dilapidated signs. That gives people, travelers, visitors, an indication that the community might be distressed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it works both ways. So this is kind of a case study that we did in one of the communities that I work in, the impact of economic signage. There is really a strong correlation between signage and increased sales. There are tons of studies that are done these days on, studies show like the replacement of aging signage can increase your weekly sales by 1 to 5%. Study shows that improvements to building signage and appearance really has just an overall general positive impact on your sales. So this picture is of a really small retail kind of strip mall in one of the communities that we've worked in. Anybody guess where this? Maybe we should have like a prize. If someone could guess what community this is. No idea. You're close.
Buena Vista.
Yes! Okay, Sunny, chairman, vice chair wins. Good job. This is in Monte Vista. So you can see they have a pole sign for liquor. They have another kind of pole sign that's kind of a monument sign, but not really. And it has liquor, and it has all these little signs that are supposed to let you know what businesses are there. and there's some flags and.
There's
you know,
actually some signs on their windows.
yeah, there's window signs and all that, and so you're so this is a state highway, and so you're driving down, and there's so much going on here that you can't really see what businesses are really there, you know? And so this is kind of an example of more is not always good. So here's the site cleaned up. You could see on we replaced the pole sign with a nice monument sign with some landscaping around it. Got rid of the kind of pole monument sign that had all the, you know, little signs trying to let you know what businesses are there.
Window signs are going.
And the window signs are gone, and then we had real consistent, uniform, you know,
Across the top.
park
Yeah.
liquors. Here's the attorney's office, and here's the realtor's office.
Yeah.
And it has increased their sales, and it really, really looks nice. So this is just an example of the economic impact of great signage. So we all want to work together with our community members and have a sign code that reflects what we're trying to do and helps our businesses. So every sign carries some sort of First Amendment protection, and that's really, really important. Signs are, people think, oh, sign code, whatever. But signs are really, really important. Your sign regulations should reflect a careful balance of your risk tolerance. There's sign litigation is pretty common. It's expensive and it's risky. We need to have an understanding of the community desire for aesthetic beautification. That's why we're having these public meetings, right? That's why we had our first public meeting on February 13th. That's why we're here again today. We want to make sure that the regulations are in place, represent your community character, what you desire. Most sign ordinances have some a few provisions of questionable constitutionality, particularly following the Reed versus Gilbert decision, and I will talk a little bit more about that. The Reed versus Arizona, or the town of Gilbert it's a small town in Arizona, and the U.S. Supreme Court issued a landmark decision concerning sign regulations and really the First Amendment generally. And this new rule basically says that your regulations at any community, so this is across the nation, has to be content neutral. So you need to be regulating your signs not based on what the actual message says, but more of the sign type. So it's really important to make sure that your sign regulations do that. And that's really the first step that we took in updating your existing regulations. So if the regulation is dependent on content, it's far less likely to survive a legal challenge. There's some exemptions like for public safety and those types of things. This ruling, again, triggered sign code updates across the country. Content-based distinctions include signs referred to content like political signs, real estate signs. In our current regulations, like the real estate signs are really your for sale signs or for rent signs. So you can kind of see that by just calling them for rent signs or for sale signs, that's the content, that's what you're trying to sell. So real estate signs, those kinds of things. So we try to really focus on the sign type, not the message. So this slide's a really good example. So calling them political signs, calling them retail, real estate signs, special event banners. We need to just stick with the sign type. Yard signs, swing signs, banners, those types of things, not what the content could possibly be. The second was really crafting a compelling purpose statement that goes beyond, protecting the health, welfare, and safety. And so we made changes to the purpose statement, and those included safety of person and property by regulating with signs that's not confuse or distract motorists, efficient communication of sign message, effective public welfare, protecting public welfare by reducing visual clutter, assisting wayfinding, and providing fair and consistent enforcement. Those are really key. The third was we scrubbed all of the definitions to reduce or eliminate all of the content-based references. So we did the content neutrality test for each and every single definition. A good one to point out is off-premise signs. As you can see here, we struck out all of the reference to what the sign could be selling, right? And so we made sure for each and every definition that it passed the content neutrality test. We structured exemptions to avoid content-based distinctions. We relied once again on the sign type: flags, banners, pennants, signs erected by city, okay? So you can notice that all these exemptions do not require the sign to be read to be placed in that exempt category. So let's talk about the key highlights. So again, we took your existing sign regulations that have been on the records for a very long time, and we made them all content neutral per the Reed decision. We set forth a compelling purpose statement. We updated all the sign definitions to capture all of the all the signs proposed in the regulations. We created a sign permit approval process. We didn't have that before. And so now it's like really clear, step by step. So anybody who is picking up your sign regulations, they'll be able to say, okay, this is exactly what I need to do. I know who I need to contact to get a sign permit. So we made it really clear. We added a sign illumination section for comp plan implementation, and this really gets at the dark skies component. We don't want signs to be illuminated and but it'd be like Las Vegas. There's tons of signs. We really want direct light sources, those types of things. We incorporated the historic sign regulations into the sign code, and the thought was there that in the regulations, throughout all your regulations, you have to go to all these different places to find out where the regs are. So we just, in the historic preservation regs, they had a section on signs. We put it in signs so that anybody knows if they're gonna get a sign permit, if they're in the historic district, it's right there. They don't have to go anywhere else. We updated the non-conforming sign regulations. So we had our first public meeting on February 13th. And so we had a lot of discussions. One of the parameters that we talked about was setting forth temporary sign permit approval and an inspection process. So not just a sign permit, but actually the inspection process and for temporary signage. And we talked a lot about the definition of art, works of art, and how difficult it is with the Reed decision to not talk about content, to have that content neutral definition. So right now, and I know Commissioner Pritchard didn't think that we could actually do it, but this regulation, this definition gets at, it is content neutral, and it's a provision in here that basically talks about text, not what the text says, but the text, and limits it to 10% of the total surface area of that illustration. Now, if the desire is to have that definition of works of art to not allow any text, we can do that as well. And so in your report, or in the regulations and the footnote, I noted in there an alternative to consider is defined works of art to contain no text at all, a pictorial illustration containing no text which is applied to or incorporated in an exterior building, wall, or door. So that's something that the public might want to weigh in on, and we can discuss that further, but I just wanted to let you know that I provided that definition, and then there's some alternatives in case that you don't want to allow any kind of text. So we can talk about that in detail. We added a temporary sign permit process. Need to get the sign permit. We set forth some dimensional, some standards. They're found in a lot of sign regulations, but we really need to tailor it to you. You might think that a temporary sign should only be up for 30 days. You might think it should be allowed to be up for 90 days. I don't know. Right now, we have it, the time limit is 45 days. We have one location, it may be on display, no more than one sign, max of 2 temporary signs per year. You might wanna have 4 temporary signs, I don't know. This is just really to, start the discussion on temporary signs, and then limit it to 18 square feet. You guys might want to, maybe have, wind-driven signs. You might want to allow those on a temporary basis. And then, so you might want to say, okay, we want them limited to X amount of time and to be this tall, or, whatever. But this is just a good starting point, and it'd be great to hear from the public on that too. We included a sign inspection procedure that will be incredibly helpful for staff. For READ compliance, I kind of mentioned this before, the year for sale for rent signs were changed to swing signs. Political signs were changed to yard signs. Really important to consider enforcement, really important to consider, like, do you want to maybe just exempt these with the regulations you have in place? Or you might want to allow them for, through a temporary permit process. So that's something that you might want to consider as well. We provided graphics for easy implementation. We have some graphics on how you measure the sign. We have some graphics on how you measure sign height. We have some graphics on illumination. Pictures worth 1,000 words, right? So we're hoping that the graphics will help with that. And last but not least, we set forth a creative sign program, review and approval program. And the purpose of that is really to be in line with your community character. You have a creative district, you have a creative community. It's actually, I should add it in here, implementing your comprehensive plan. I think having a creative sign program really does that as well. You want to foster that creativity and uniqueness and high quality workmanship. And if it's a sign that really represents your community, maybe consider increasing your maximum, square footage allowances and those types of things. So I can't wait to hear what you think about that. And we also set forth some design criteria for you to consider. Again, this is the first time you've seen this, but we added standards for quality, contextual, architectural, multiple sign design consistency, and materials. And I think that candy sign is pretty darn creative. Great. So with that, Chairman Favik, I'd like to have you maybe open it up for the public and maybe say a few words, and then after we get public input, then we'll turn it back over to the PZBC for discussion. So I will depart unless you have any questions for me.
I do real quick.
Sure.
The last screen you had on there, it says one of the regulations was contextual.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not the same as regulating content?
Context it's more the historic design style. It's a creative image of it, it's more imagery based, not content.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
there's
that's it,
getting
that's it,
content
yes,
and
yes,
context.
yes, yes. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank the public for showing up. I mean, we really look forward to all your input. You know, we want to look at this project as a community involved, and we're all live in one community, and let's make it the best community we could possibly make it. So I really do appreciate your time coming out, and we want to hear all your comments, suggestions, and concerns if there's any. Anyone first that would like to come up? After your, public discussion, we'll go ahead and we'll be talking up here as well, and we'll go through some of my questions, and I'm sure everybody else will have some different concerns as well.
Well, you know I have the laptop, come up.
All right. Thank you.
I'm never shy. One thing as far as the
Can you
temporary.
state your name, please?
Oh, I'm Brian Kirby. I work for the paper, Chronicle. One thing I was wondering is the temporary signs, when I open up my gallery, I plan to have a First Friday party every month. And I plan to have a little small, 2 by 6 foot sign, 3 by 6 is 18 square feet. My First Friday openings for like the week before the opening. And so I'd like to have that for a week per month, every month. So it'll be a First Friday opening this Friday coming up, and then it'll be open up there for 5 days or so, 7 to 5 days. And then I'll take it open down after that first one. But am I limited to only doing 2 months a year, or is this temporary sign that I can put up for a week every month?
And this is really why we want you to be coming up here and talking about this, because, what we want to look at is, hey, do we want to make it 2 straight months, or can we say, hey, 2 calendar
Yeah.
months, pretty much, split up the days? I mean, we're here to try and see what would work for you
Right,
and try
right.
and make it work for everybody.
Right.
Describe the sign.
Well, I don't have it ready yet, but it's gonna be a small sign that I could put up on the door windows or right out front somewhere. Just a vinyl banner that I can say, coming this Friday, the first Friday opening, a new artist in town. Just so I can remind the public and the tourists that, hey, this Friday, we're having a party. And I like to do that every month for 3 or 4 days before the event happens.
So you don't know if it will be a wall sign, a banner, a window sign, or a sandwich board? You don't know what it's.
Not right off the bat. I'd rather have a banner. I'm kind of in for banners. So I don't know exactly on that. But I do know that it would be a temporary sign that would one up for at least 5 days per month, advertised every month.
Like affixed to a building, you think?
Yeah, fixed the building, might be inside on the window, tacked on the window, or on the door. It could be just a big poster, or it could be, like you said, a signboard out front. Probably not a signboard. I'd like to be a little bit more noticeable on the window back here. The other thing, on my inner tube company, there's an alley between the Comcast sign and, or building, another one, it kind of goes to that Jason, backside. There's a little alley there. And I have to get permission from the building, but I'd like to have some kind of sign, another vinyl sign, bigger, to say, rent inner tubes from here. This is where you get your inner tubes, because I'm not gonna have an actual building for the sign. It's mainly just a gazebo type of tent where I rent the inner tubes out of. So I want kind of that it'll be a temporary sign, but a sign that'll show the inner tubes. And again, to get the tourists to know this is where you come to rent your inner tubes. So, questions like that, I think, that we have. What kind of signs, how big, how long do we keep them up?
Yeah, especially your second situation, I mean, that's,
That'd be an off-premise
yeah, I
sign?
mean,
Yeah, that's off
that's what it
premise, 'cause-
sounds like to me.
Yeah.
The business isn't where the gazebo is?
The
It is,
sign
but
wouldn't be where.
the business, the gazebo is gonna be right on the Riverwalk, and it's not gonna be unless you're on the Riverwalk, you won't be able to see it. So I want signs to say, go down this alley to the gazebo to rent your inner tubes, and this is where you rent your inner tubes from. I'm also gonna have brochures and everything that can pass out the hotel showing where where you rent inner tubes. But I would like to also have some kind of sign high that I can string between the two buildings, and I haven't got permission from the owners yet, that's just an idea I have.
Everything you're asking is in here, I think. In terms of window signs, it says right here, commercial property can only be 40% of the window.
Yeah.
If it's a banner, then it has to do with the length of your building and
Okay.
a percentage of that.
Okay.
And off-premise signs are not permitted at all.
Oh,
And I think that's in here.
Deb, one of the second one, the off-premise, I mean, that could be considered a directional sign, right? Like, hey, this way to
Exactly.
that. I
Well, I don't
mean, we
know.
put an arrow on it. it's a
yeah, and that's
directional
what I was
sign.
gonna be, is more of a directional sign, like you're saying.
And that's not a permanent sign, correct?
It'll be just a temporary, and mainly be just temporary during the summer months,
Seasonal.
during the business
Yeah.
time.
Seasonal.
Because this is a seasonal business anyway.
I think you're just gonna have to go through the permit process to find out
Okay,
what's acceptable and what's not.
right. And the other thing, on top of my photography gallery, there's, where the second windows are, there's a place where you could have a sign there. And I have to come back to y'all, and I was just gonna get a wooden sign, 4 feet by 16 feet, that says Trinidad Photography Gallery.
You can't just do that. You can't just go out and
Well, yeah,
arbitrarily hang a sign on the building.
well, I understand that, but I was gonna get through the process and everything.
So I would suggest you to read this,
Yeah,
what
I
we're
will.
doing, and then go through the application. from
And
there.
this ain't in stone.
Right.
That's why we're all here.
That's why I'm giving
That's
suggestions.
why we're all here, this ain't in
Yeah.
stone.
Yeah.
It can be jiggled one way or another, you know? This is just some of the stuff that we want brought forward to
Right,
us.
and this is what I'm just kind of what my future, what I'm thinking about, and if that's in your
To
same
me,
kind
it's
of
important that
ballpark.
you brought that up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna be something we're gonna have to figure out, and better now than later.
Right, right, and maybe you can say, oh, that might be a good
Yep.
idea, and throw it in there, so.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is there a specific section in here that references special events?
There's,
That's the
Temporary signs.
temporary, or that's a
Temporary.
banner,
Could that be
or-
like my
Yeah,
party,
but-
Friday party,
But,
temporary event?
yeah, Commissioner Pritchard, brought up a very good point, is that for your banner, for that you want, for 3 days before your event,
Mhm.
you're allowed to have, that type of signage. It might not be a temporary sign that you might put it up here and there,
Right.
but, and if you take it down and put it up, that's okay.
Right,
It's really important to look at your sign allowances,
Right.
and you probably don't, even though you think of it as temporary, it's probably doesn't matter.
It could be.
Yeah,
Won't he have to kind of, like, so I'm sure your gallery's gonna have a permanent sign,
Right,
right? So you
right.
may have to
you have to look
make
at your
that
whole sign
smaller
allowance.
to
Mhm.
be able to allot yourself enough room for the temporary
Exactly.
sign.
Mhm.
So,
And what I might even think about doing is on the permit sign, just do a small banner, first Friday opening this Friday, and kind of just do it across it
yeah,
where
one
you
of
have
these,
blocking.
slip in there the
yeah.
first Friday,
Something, yeah, something
that would
quick.
make it part of the actual main sign.
Mhm.
Yeah, just a temporary part
Yeah.
of the main sign.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused, the sign going up and down kind of seems to contradict the general regulation that the signs shall be permanent in nature. Is that kind of contradict being able to take it down, isn't that no longer permanent if it's not installed?
Well, I'll have
We
a,
just don't want to get in a situation where
Yeah.
every sign we approve is coming up and down and up and down.
Mhm.
well, my,
I want to
yeah,
accommodate.
yeah, my idea was to have the permanent Trinidad Photography Gallery sign there.
Right.
And then do a banner type thing where I can just
Just
tack
kind of-
on that permit sign
Mhm.
and not remove the permit sign.
Yeah.
And just have it tacked on there, either on that sign or on the window or something. So, and that's
In the
all I-
sign permit, it would have to be clear, and you look at
Yeah.
the sign allowance,
Right.
and
Yeah.
make sure, and he'll have in that place, okay, this might change here and there, but it meets the allowances, and it's part of this permanent structure.
And before I ever do anything, I'll do a mock-up and show you, make sure it works with y'all, what y'all want to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Joey Salzar. I own Brick Sports Bar and Grill. I'm also the president of the Entertainment District. Couple things that I got two different things is, I guess we'll start the entertainment district first. Basically what that's gonna do is it's gonna create drinking, you know, in Trinidad city limits on the streets. The problem that I see with some of these things is, you know, how, is the city gonna have something for that district in place where we can post different events up for us? Like right now, we don't have nothing. So we don't have no way to promote anything we're doing for the entertainment district at all, so, you know.
As far as signs, right?
As far as signs. I mean, the paper is great, but we're trying to attract people. I mean, our main goal right now is trying to get these people off the highway.
Yes.
That's what our main goal is. And without a sign showing digitally, you're not gonna get them off there. You know, you gotta direct some way from the highway down Main Street to show the events that we're having. And right now, we have zero signage. We have nothing, you know, and I just don't see, you know, having an entertainment district, you know, it's, what is that? We're the only one in Colorado or that
It's
has,
just in southern Colorado
in
right
southern
now.
Colorado that has that opportunity, you know, to have alcohol beverages outside, you know, your building. Which is awesome, and we can create so many things in the summer months, but without no signage, you know, showing them, hey, this is what's going on, this event's going on. I mean, one of the biggest events we got coming up is a Blues Fest, pre-fest, it's on a Friday night. Well, the locals are pumped probably to come to it, but what about all the people that are crossing through, you know, that they're like, you know, going from Santa Fe to Denver, or Denver back to south? How are we telling them Trinidad's having this big event coming up? We have no way telling them that. You know, everyone always tells me, oh, Facebook's the way to market, but the only way Facebook markets is if somebody likes your page. There's no other way that Facebook is marketing these events. It's not really a signage event. It's more trying to attract, you know, locals. It's trying to attract tourism.
What is it that you think you're suggesting?
Well, I think you know, I think what we need to do is we need to create something with the city, and, you know, you guys are on the board, to create a sign for the district or the city where we could rotate something in and out of there all the time, build a sign or pay for a sign where we could use some of that tax money and build like a nice billboard sign where it's gonna create different events. I mean, you have a lot of different things happening in the summer months. You have farmer's market, you have, I mean, there's art walk, you have, I think, don't we have a scary museum walk or something like that?
Not no more.
I mean, just a lot of different businesses, you could rotate those businesses on that signage too, you know, and create them and pull them off that highway. I'm from Denver, I've lived here all my life, but I moved to Denver and came back. You know, I'm used to being in Denver where you see nothing but signage, where, you know, View House, perfect example. View House, you see their stuff, they're rotating, you know, Final Four, food, different events.
Well, you realize that we're not Denver, and we're not trying to be Denver.
Right. Exactly.
We're a small little western town. We have no intention of becoming like Pueblo, Denver, or any of those.
But I think if we think that we're a small western town, we're not gonna create the small western people off the highway, which we haven't been in the last 10 years, 20 years. I mean, what have we done in Trinidad, you know, as far as signage to pull all these people? All I keep hearing is, look how many people go in and out of the highway district and I-25. How are we pulling them off there? I mean, how many businesses are in Trinidad that are failing right now because they don't have enough business? They're not packing their doors. So I think we gotta think outside the box a little bit and pull some of the people off the highway to create something where it is gonna pull more people. You know, I want my restaurant full. I'm sure Tony wants his restaurant full every single night.
And I don't want to be naysayer, but for an event like the Blues Fest thing you're talking about, what you're assuming is that someone who's driving from Denver to Albuquerque on a Friday, who's got a destination, is gonna turn their trip around and decide to stay in Trinidad for that Blues event that Friday night?
Yeah, what I'm thinking is they're gonna come, so most people, if you guys don't realize this, they go from Denver to Trinidad to fill up for gas. They stop and get gas here, and then they go from here to either Santa Fe or Albuquerque to fill up gas again. So if we have some kind of sign showing them from that side of town, this side of town, showing them both ways, I think we can pull more people off the highway. You know, especially even Monday through Thursday, if our event's Friday or Saturday, they're gonna see that maybe they're coming through business and they're headed home. Well, maybe they might stop in Trinidad and stay a couple extra nights. You know, and they're gonna spend more money in the restaurants, the merchants, you know, the hotels, everything.
Even things like the farmer's market, right? I mean,
Farmer's
people
market.
see that. I've stopped in little towns on a Saturday during my drive to stop at the farmer's market.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just a great thing, I mean, and, you know, with bricks, so that's one thing with our entertainment district, the other part is bricks, so. Bricks, the way we have is I used to have a digital sign, and I apologize, I just got this tonight, so I haven't read through it, so I need to read more information on this part. But we have a digital sign, I think it's like 6 foot, 7 foot, it's about 12 inches, and it kind of scrolls, you know, and I've seen in the past, like scrolling signs weren't allowed in here, but then in the last month and a half, I see them popping up all over, so I'm gonna have to read some literature on that to see if they're getting allowed or not, but where that would go is on our side of the building, same thing, like to create, coming off the highway from this side, from Sonic, looking down. You guys look down Main Street on Thursday night, 4:30, 5, 6 o'clock, it's a ghost town. We gotta create something where it's at least, hey, my business is open. You can see it from Sonic. They're not stopping right from Sonic, getting gas and turning right back around and going right back on the highway. And that's what they're doing.
You gotta also think about that, we don't wanna be like Las Vegas.
No.
We don't wanna look down that street and see all kinds of signs flipping in and out, and all kinds of lighting. You can have signs, but you've gotta be cautious of the kind that you put in.
And I totally agree. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, I think at least you wanna look down the street and look like businesses are open. Because right now, it's just like, our marijuana shops are jamming, they're busy. But from right here down, not much is happening. Thank goodness we're busy, you know, we're busy every weekend and, you know, we have a lot of things going on, but it's, some of the businesses are pretty slow. You know, and I think if you created something where they could look down the street and see activity or see some kind of lighting or something going on, I think they would drive a little bit further down Main Street, maybe stop in your establishment. I mean, the other thing too, which I don't see in here is what about lighting? Is there any kind of lighting that you guys are allowing on your building?
What do you mean by that?
So illuminating lighting is basically lighting kind of like Holiday Inn, shining up or down on the sidewalk. Do we have anything in here for that? I
They're
didn't
trying to
see
do the
anything.
spotlighting on the hotels and, you know, the little accent lighting and stuff like that.
So there's a restaurant,
I think
yeah, there's a restaurant in Denver, it's called Jackson's Hole, where, I don't know, do you? So where it is, it's on the side of the building, it's down lighting. So during certain events, like Rockies is coming up, they light those lights purple. So it lights the building purple. During, I don't know, St. Patty's Day, it's green.
Again, you're confusing Denver with Trinidad.
I'm not confusing Denver from Trinidad. I live here. I'm a full-time resident of Trinidad. I was raised here.
But as far as, I think you're getting off base when you're talking about purple lighting on the side of the building. I don't think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, and that will be addressed in, when we get to the zoning code. So that's more design standards type of discussion and not so much signs.
Right.
It's a valuable discussion.
It's a
so
yeah,
Just not
absolutely.
part of the sign discussion.
Okay.
And we'll make note of that as
So the
well.
lighting would be it wouldn't be part of no signage at all.
Right, that'd be more like design
structural.
standards for your buildings and those types of things. And we'll discuss that when we get to zoning, so we'll be sure to make a note of that for sure.
And I'm not trying to be rude at all. I'm not trying to make Trinidad Denver. What I'm trying to do is I want to see more people out and about shopping in Trinidad. I mean, the merchants are hurting down here because they don't have enough people filling their stores and their restaurants and all
You might
that.
be putting too much faith in signage. There's a lot of things going on in Trinidad besides lack of electric signage that's keeping us. So there's other things to consider.
But I think signage is one of the main things that pulls a tourist off the highway. Wouldn't it be? Like, don't you think that to get somebody off the highway, don't you think the sign would be the one to pull them off the highway?
I'm not sure about that. I think people going by here they're headed someplace, going both directions. We're not yet at, I just don't quite agree with that.
So, I mean, right now, you know, I got a lot of comments. Would it be better for me to wait to the end after I get
Yeah,
everybody?
yeah, let's have everybody continue their comments and then we'll,
Okay.
you as a
Thank
commission will
you.
discuss.
All right, thank you, I
Really
appreciate it.
Thank
your,
you.
Anyone else? Carl?
And I might want to come back if I may.
I don't know.
Mr. Gibbs?
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. Carl Gabrielson. I'd like to echo a lot of what Joe was just saying. And that is, and I know clearly we don't want to be a Denver, we don't want to be a Pueblo, we want to be a Trinidad.
Right.
One of the things that Trinidad has struggled with, and we all know this because we've had conversations about it for years, is a stable economic generator. You know, we've had oil and gas industries and extraction of coal and things like that over the years that we've gone through boom and bust cycles. And for years, we've talked about one of the legs of our economic engine being tourism. And I think it's really important that we use signage of some sort to get some of the tourists off of I-25. Absolutely, the tourists, for the most part, are going through Trinidad on their way south or north. Predominantly, it's, you know, the Texas traffic going through Trinidad on their way to Colorado, you know, their playground. And I'm not suggesting that signage along the highway is going to get them to come off and spend a weekend in Trinidad. I think that'd be wonderful. I'd love to see that. But I do think that we could have signage along I-25 that helps to bring them off. And even if they, you know, last night was a classic case. I was in Los Animas Grill for dinner with my kids, and the two tables on either side of us were tourists. I heard them talking with Jay Gonzalez, you know, how they found the place. I didn't hear, you know, what drove them off I-25. I wish I had, but I just heard them, you know, talking about where they were from and where they were going and things of that nature. And, you know, I think it's important for Trinidad's long-term health that we attract them off the highway. Now, I don't have the magic solution. You know, I'm not saying we should be doing this or be doing that, but, you know, we've got experts here that have experience in outside communities, and we are not Denver. We are not Pueblo. But what we are is a small, struggling community in southern Colorado that's greatest resource is I-25. 3.25 million tourist traffic, or whatever the number is nowadays. The last number I heard, stat from CDOT, was there's 3.25 million tourists that drive through Trinidad every year on their way to, you know, their playground in Colorado. And I think it's important that we capture more of the tourist dollar and bring them into town.
This sign code that we're talking about has to do primarily with, not the highway, not I-25, but with the.
Oh, it deals absolutely with I-25. There's a specific section in here that talks about that. And I'm not saying I know what the answer is. I'm saying that we as a community need to have more conversation about what it's going to take to get people off the highway. Because it's important that Joe's business and Tony's business and everyone else's business here gets more tourist dollar in there. It's the only way we're going to become healthy. That's my thought. And I'm certainly not advocating for, you know, a Las Vegas type sign or anything like that. I'm not even telling you I have the solution. I'm saying that I think we need to have more conversations about it on what we can do as a community to drive more tourist traffic into town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Anyone but Brad? Anyone?
Anyone but me? One more time, Brad Kirby here. I have to agree with both of them. I think I-25 is our best resource right now to get people off the highway and to come visit Trinidad, make it a destination point for tourists. And that's where we'll have a great business that won't leave once we get it going here.
We have billboards.
We have, and there's one great billboard on the highway that's coming in from south. Up here is Obie's, and there's a great billboard, and you see that every time.
No, to Trinidad.
There's that sign too. Yeah, there's this sign, but I think we can do more with the billboards that we have, especially that one that Obie's has, is the biggest one that you can see right off the bat. that we should have that divided in 3 sections: entertainment, galleries, and recreation. And promote our business more on the highways. The other thing I think, besides I-25, we got the train that goes from Chicago to LA. This is our #1, this is a midway point here. We have a lot of people who can get off that train, stay for 24 hours, and get back on that same train the next day and keep on going to their destination. I think we should do more with the train stop in area, where you put signs on a train stop. As people taking the train to LA, they see these signs, they say, well, we're coming back in a week, let's stop here for a day when on our way back to Kansas City or Chicago. I think the train tracks is another great destination that we're missing out there too. You know, a lot of people going back and forth in the train tracks. But I think that's really our biggest resource is I-25, get them off that, and make them stay more than just McDonald's and gas, and also get them off the train tracks, and make this a destination spot for arts and recreation. And I think our town can be a nice, still small town, but bring in a lot more money with the tourist business. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you guys doing? My name is Jamie Brizov. I'm with Indy Creative Designs in town. I'm a sign business here. We're on Elm Street. You know, these guys talking about bringing business into Trinidad. I go every year to the trade shows in Las Vegas. Not the signs in Vegas, but the trade shows. We deal with all the sign companies, we deal with the manufacturers, we deal with everything that's going on. We're the ones that put up the first digital sign here in Trinidad on Main Street for Cook Motor. The company that provided that sign to us has done tons of research on digital signs. And I know digital signs are an issue here. Excuse me, guys, my blood pressure's high, I've just been overwhelmed, so. You know, the sign code, since day one, we've been open 8 years here in Trinidad. It's been an issue since day one. There's been issues trying to promote other businesses, period. That's been the issue, is the sign code, the signs that are allowed, stuff like that. I'm glad we're getting a new sign code. I agree, the highway is a great place to bring people off of the highway into the city. And the company that we dealt with on Cook Motor has also done some research for us. We own all the property around the golf course. We own everything next to Chef Lou's, all the way down to the hotel. The stretch of property that runs along the backside of the golf course we own all that. Now, we have no access to it. There's big power lines that run through it. It's right on the interstate. There's nothing we could do with that property. So we had them put together a billboard sign, digital. I knew it wasn't allowed, but still, though, they were willing to do the analysis. They're willing to look at the space. They're willing to look at the traffic that's gone through that area to see how much traffic goes through Trinidad. They're willing to even come talk to the city, planners, commissioners, anybody. They're willing to get involved because digital signage is the next way that we're going. Digital signage is where the market's going. CDOT puts digital signage up. The state puts digital signage up. It's not just simply a business owner trying to put up a sign, but the city, state, everybody's doing digital signs now for one reason, to advertise events, businesses, certain things in the community, you know, and I don't know where we're gonna go with digital signs. I don't know where we're gonna go with signage, period, in Trinidad. You know, that's why we're here trying to figure this all out. A digital sign, billboard size for up on our property is gonna run about $70,000, okay? That's what it's gonna cost to put a digital sign up for Trinidad on the highway. Now, I'm not saying that it's gonna be allowed, but not only for my business, but also for city functions, Blues Fest, stuff like that. You know, there would be opportunities where there'd be sign, you know, time, advertising time donated to the city, donated to functions, nonprofits. There's so many things that it could go for. You know, that area over there, there's no houses, there's nothing. It's dead property. You know, there's nothing we could do with it, but it's right on the highway. And to me, in my eyes, it's a great visibility to help Trinidad grow and bring people into these businesses. You know, that's marijuana I don't care about, but that's what everybody's coming here for. We know that. It's the rest of the city that I care about, because marijuana's not gonna be here for long. It's not. It's here, it's gonna go though. And the businesses that are here and the businesses that are trying to survive now are the ones that need the help now. They're the ones that need to grow here, not the marijuana, because, I mean, I hope you guys agree, marijuana's not gonna be here forever. New Mexico legalizes it, we're done. I mean, we will still get some traffic, but we're not gonna get what we have now. So I don't know, I don't know where to go. I'm frustrated as a business owner, I'm frustrated as we do signs, I don't know where we're gonna go here. I don't know if we're gonna ever be allowed to do a digital sign. I haven't even talked to Tara about it, I haven't even brought it up. It's something that's not, my priority now because we have other plans. Like I said, we own all that property. My dad owns a plumbing business in Albuquerque. He's coming up, he's gonna build an indoor driving range and a brewery there. And so that's where we're going. We're building more businesses in town. And so a digital sign would be something, like Joey was saying, off the highway, that would be perfect for here. So I'm just trying to put ideas in your guys' head, possibly that, eventually. Phil Rico, our mayor, he came to me and asked about three digital signs on each side of the city. He said, what would it take? I don't know if you've ever talked to him about that, but he came and talked to me about that and what it would take to put them up and for city functions, basically. So, I don't know what we're gonna do here and where we're gonna go with it, but I just wanted to put it in your heads, is this a possibility that we could get to later on? Maybe allow a little more signage. Cook Motor, his sign was allowed because of hardship. Other than that, no one else is gonna be able to do a digital sign. They are up in town. There's some that are up in town that are up illegally. There's signage here that are up illegally, and one of my issues with this sign code is, I don't mind the sign code. I'll obey every sign code rule in here. My issue is regulation. Nobody regulates any of the signs in this town. Nobody. Nobody, and that's an issue with me. As a business owner, it's an issue, and that needs to be resolved as well. I don't know who would do it, our building inspector, or who would be Tara in charge of that. Me and Tara have been around before, on signs and stuff. But regulation, I mean, if we're gonna be enforcing these codes, they need to be enforced for everybody, and not a certain few. And I've seen a certain few get by with some things and some others not, and to me, that bothers me. I mean, it's almost bothering me to the point where we do so much signage outside of Trinidad. We do stuff for the state of New Mexico, we do stuff down in Angel Fire, we work north, we do stuff for the state of Colorado, we do stuff for CDOT, we do signs for everybody. We've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment that we have in our shop to do signs, and it's just, do I want to stay in Trinidad and do signs? I do. I love it. This is my community. But I do so much outside of Trinidad that it wouldn't hurt me to stop doing signage in Trinidad. That it wouldn't. I don't want to do that though, but I just want it to be fair. I don't mind doing signage, but it's got to be regulated and it's got to be fair for everybody.
On that point there, don't feel bad because there's a lot of different things ain't regulated.
And I know that. No, I know that. I know that.
There ain't nobody up here picking on signs or not doing anything for signs. There's a lot of regulations that have to be.
All across the board. No,
Yes.
I agree, because we own the glass business, we own the body shop, we do glass, we pull permits for glass when we need to. Depending, we do storefronts. I understand that. No, I know that the regulation needs to be across the board, but this meeting's about signs.
I understand that.
That's why I'm bringing it up, regulation for signs, I agree it's everything. So, I don't know where we go from here, and I agree with Joey, I agree with everybody, we need to figure it out, and I don't know if this is the last meeting, but we need to figure out what we're gonna do for the community and do for this city to help bring people in. I mean, the sad thing is we do signs, and the sad thing is we see businesses open and we see them close. We open them, we close them. I've done signs in some of these buildings in this community, 3, 4, 5 different signs for 5 different businesses. And to me, it breaks my heart to see people coming in here, spending their hard-earned money, and then they're turning around and they're done. It's nothing to do with signage, but still, we just need to bring people in here to help this community grow everything else, because marijuana's not gonna be it, guys. I mean, marijuana's here now. I know there's a lot of money coming in from it now. But is it gonna stay? I mean, I don't know. So thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have a good night.
Hi, I'm Kelly Eckhoff, and I am a very nervous public speaker, so please bear with me. I have a general comment about the LED sign or a lit sign, illuminated sign. On I-25 coming in, I think there could be the room for one with city advertisements and things like that. I think we need to be very careful about incorporating specifics about a sign like that in the overall code. To me, that would be a variance, an exception, a one-of-a-kind type sign, not something that we would delineate a broad allowance for, to where you drive down I-25 and there's lit signs everywhere. I personally live at Cedar and Commercial, right downtown, in the middle of all these lit signs and things, or the potential for these lit signs. So I do have a personal interest in, when I look over I-25, that I see a historic town and not a Vegas-style town. That's just my comment on the billboard along I-25. My comments about the code that is the draft that's being proposed are really more specific. I'm an accountant, so I get kind of drowned in the details, but the former code made a lot of sense to me in that the definitions were separate from the things that were allowed and the things that are exempted and the things that are prohibited. Now there's the purpose and exemptions, and then some general regulations, and it moves on to permitted and prohibited signs. When you get to that section, some of these are definitions, some of these are allowed, some of these aren't allowed. To me, as a member of the community, this is hard to interpret. Are you defining things? Are you telling me what I can do? Are you telling me what I can't do? And it seems to be very jumbled in that section. The definitions section, from a contractual standpoint, when you're reading a real estate contract, which is my background also, is very clear. They define all the terms that they're going to use throughout the contract, and then you can reference back to that. So when you read something about an illuminated sign, you're like, oh wait, does that qualify for an illuminated sign? You can then reference the definition and know that that's what that section of the code is referring to. I find that the way that this is currently laid out to be confusing. Back to the exemptions section. For example, number 2 exempts flags and pennants, but if you go back to section 1492AA, it discusses flags. So are flags exempted, or they are part of the code because they're included in part of the code at the back. Same with window displays, same with works of art. They're exempted and then they're included. So that's confusing from a user standpoint. Number 5, on the exemptions, I think that when you use the phrase a limited period of time, that's very open-ended. I come to South and people like to leave their Christmas decorations up all year. And I think that a limited period of time is kind of leaves a lot of gray area as far as what that means. Under the electronic message board, I don't have a planning background, so please help me understand. If you read a use by right section of the code for a specific zone, you can use your property under that right. Or there's a section that says you have some conditional uses that you can use that property for. Then we have a sign code. If you're requesting a sign that's outside of that code, it seems like you would use a variance, not a CUP. So I don't understand why we would propose using a CUP that would potentially set a precedent for an LED sign, whereas a variance explicitly does not set a precedent, from my understanding.
I was gonna say, a CUP could be, we can review it every year. For a variance, we can't.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons.
Okay.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So if somebody pays a $75,000 LED sign and they're conditionally, I mean, to me that's subjective, and once you've passed one LED sign under a conditional use, when the conditional use isn't defined in the code, why is that not a variance of a sign code? I don't understand.
You wouldn't be allowed, once you do a variance, it's done.
Right.
But if you do a CUP, supposedly, for instance, let's just say that you put a sign up and you say, I'm gonna advertise this hotel. Okay? And then you got a food store across the street, and you go and put that. You'd have to come back with the CUP. You'd have to come back to put that particular store or restaurant on that particular sign. That particular sign goes however you put it to begin with.
But she just said you can't regulate content. So if it's an LED sign that can be programmed by the user and you guys can't regulate what that says.
Sydney, you were doing a really good job in answering the conditional use permit process. Just to add on to what you were saying, with the conditional use process, that gives the commission the authority to review the characteristics of that particular property when they're granting that approval. So they're gonna be taking specific look at height, the amount, the flashing of the, message, not the content of it.
But that would be
And
the variance too.
No, so the variance process is, based on, really hardship criteria. Like if there was some particular hardship, like a unique shape of your lot or topography or something like that. So it's a little bit more difficult to meet a variance criteria. With the conditional use permit process, the commission has the ability to set forth conditions that are really specific to that particular site, that particular business. And so it's really more of a case, if you can think of it as more of a case-by-case type review that is reviewed annually. So like, let's say a digital sign went up and the commission put forth specific standards on the lighting, those kind of characteristics. If it turns out that that changes, then staff would come back and say, okay, we've noticed that the lighting on the display or whatever, the seconds that it goes by are not what was approved and you need to change it.
The second thing, if I can add, the second thing, if you don't mind, if
No,
I add
absolutely.
something cool, is if the only way that you can qualify for a digital sign is to have a hardship, then we're taking away someone else's economic ability because they don't have a hardship based on the size of their lot, or the topography of the land, or the way the building is developed. So part of having the commission look at signs is that there's some equity and equality in how the sign code is implemented. So if the variance process is the only way to get a digital sign, then what you're saying is the only people that can benefit from that economic value are people who have an irregular, difficult hardship with their lot. Then that would leave 99% of the people unable, as Mr. Breedlove stated, to have access to that possibility.
What is her point about issuing a CUP sets precedents?
Well, so if you weren't having any digital signs at all, then you wouldn't allow them based on whether it's a variance or whether it's a CUP, or no matter what that case may be. But if you're allowing people to come forward because of an irregularity in their lot to get a digital sign, but not allowing 99% of the rest.
I understand that point.
Okay.
But let's talk about the CUP.
Right.
Avenue to get a digital sign. Does that not set a precedent that would be hard to overcome? Would the commission ever have an opportunity to deny a CUP for a digital sign once they are approved? Once one is approved?
Well, if they're not meeting the conditions that you set forth, is that what you mean in the review, in like the annual review of CUPs?
No, I mean,
New signs.
if she comes up and gets a CUP for a digital sign, and it's approved, giving her conditions for her situation, the next person comes up, we're obligated to give them a CUP with certain conditions for their situation. We are not in a position then to ever to turn down a digital sign. We're going to be swamped with them.
Well, you need to really remember that there's specific CUP review criteria. And again, it's that particular application on that particular site that you're considering. Every site's different, every building's different, every sign design, there's different parameters. So it's not really setting a precedent because you have to review each
It doesn't mean that we're then in a
separately.
position to deny them. It only means that there's different conditions.
You have to review them per the criteria and set forth those conditions accordingly.
You would also be able to limit the ability to get a CUP based on zone district. So for example, industrial zoning might be a zone district where a digital sign would not be considered Because really, if you go with Mr. Gabrielson's, Mr. Salazar, and Mr. Breedlove's suggestion that the purpose of digital signs are to drive the economy, then you may not want to allow them in industrial, because that's really not where you want to draw the tourist crowd. You wouldn't obviously allow them in any residential zoning. You might not want to allow them in HP, depending on
Right.
what your thoughts are on historic buildings and the historic character. So that would leave you with community commercial, which would be heavily the I-25 corridor would be community commercial. But to Ms. McCool's point, I'll use Red Wing Electric, for example. That's a community commercial zoned lot in the middle of a residential area. So you may want, by the criteria setting the conditional use permit forward, they might not be able to meet that criteria because of their effects of that sign on the surrounding housing units. So there would be some limitation that you could do. But to back your point up, Commissioner Pritchard, you're correct. If you talk about exit 11, for example, you would have the ability for every business to come forward and request a conditional use permit along that I-25 corridor. If you want to talk about your concerns specific to exit 11, then, you know, will there be one at La Quinta and one at Big O Tires and one at Quality Inn and one at Canico and one at Walmart and one at the Budget Summit and one at Tequila's and one at Wendy's? Yes.
McDonald's, Taco Bell.
Those are zoned, I would have to look at their zoning, because Ms. Eckhoff would like to
Just that
possibly
view is
be.
still that's our downtown, you know, and so if we, again, my concern is you grant a CUP, you've set a precedent, now we have an I-25 corridor flashing with LED signs. To me, really, the fundamental question is, as a city, do we want this signage in our downtown area? And if you do, what is the guidelines for that? Because if we're just saying, well, we'll just take it case by case, which is what I'm hearing, case by case seems to open us up for this precedent-setting nightmare of sign after sign after sign. Whereas if it truly is a hardship, I mean, hardship may be the position of the lot, it may be the inability to catch people's attention because you're sitting 40 feet below the actual highway when you're coming through downtown. I think there's the ability to use a variance, in my opinion, to allow for specific signage for specific businesses without opening this big can of worms of CUP request after CUP request. One other thought, when the Toyota sign was being erected, I went and was researching maximum height, sign height, limits in cities along I-25. And don't quote me, I don't know the exact height, but I remember Pueblo was, below that, Colorado Springs is below that, almost even these big cities that we don't want to be like, don't have signs that tall. I'm wondering where 55 feet kind of came from, and is that something that is open for discussion to get us more in line with even the big cities along the I-25 corridor? Just a thought.
That's a good question. I don't know where it came from or how it relates.
Tara, wasn't that I don't remember now, but wasn't that something that we looked at that referenced the height of the viaduct versus the signed height? Is that something that we looked at way back when?
The that may have been part of the discussion, Commissioner Leone, in the conditional use permit that was received for the Toyota business to operate. But you may remember after the comprehensive plan was adopted, part of what the comprehensive plan called for in that La Puerta area right there was for that to be zoned community commercial. It was zoned industrial. Kip Hamden's property where Toyota was located was zoned HP, and the street and bridge property right behind that was zoned industrial. So the developer came forward and rezoned all of that community commercial. You may remember that the front part of that lot, which is immediately adjacent to Commercial Street, they did come and get a variance for the sign there. And the commission required them to use historic materials, which they did in building the sandstone and rock sign. But the back part of that lot where the freestanding sign is was rezoned community commercial. And Ms. Eckhoff is correct, based on the code, written and community commercial freestanding signs are allowable up to 55 feet. I will say that the developer did not build it to 55 feet. We would have to ask Mr. Gabrielson exactly what it is, but I want to say it's between 40 and 45. I would have to ask Mr. Gabrielson.
I believe it's 50 feet.
Is it 50 feet? Thank you. So it was a maximum allowed of 55 feet. But community commercial zoning allowed that freestanding sign. That's why you did not see that application.
But that 55 feet, you're saying came from some math from the height of the viaduct?
Well, I was thinking when they redid the sign for McDonald's,
Mhm.
that had something to do with the height of the viaduct. And something had to do with the state of Colorado, but I don't remember how that
I
worked.
believe the current sign code was passed in the 80s, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been amended since then, but I can't say with certainty.
And in these regulations, we didn't change any of the dimensional standards. These are the current dimensional standards that you've had on the books for quite a long time.
So certainly a debate about that height is on the table.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Again, now we're continuing that definitions, it's not really called definitions anymore, it's called permitted and prohibited signs. Number Y, letter Y, temporary sign. I think we should, again, define limited period of time. And then I talked about the exemptions, then, exemptions for a flag, and then AA, when driven signs includes flag. Works of art is the same way, yard signs are the same way. And your lettering is off, it goes AA, BB, BB, CC.
Right, got it.
Oh, wait, I have a question following that.
There's two Bs.
And I thought, A, B, A, C, A, D. Just, And then just a few comments quickly on the section about the creative signs. I think that the design criteria, the design quality section is very subjective. To create a positive visual impact with a high degree of thoughtfulness and imagination and inventiveness and spirit is extremely hard to quantify.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? I think if there's no further discussion from public, I'd like to go ahead and open up discussion for us at this point.
Should I get that going real quick?
What's that?
Yeah. Can I start that real quick?
Let's do it.
So I'm all with these gentlemen about pulling people off the highway. If any of you remember any of my public speaking when I was running for city council, you're absolutely right. The cannabis thing is great, right? But it's not here to last, okay? As soon as New Mexico goes legal, a lot of this goes away. And we can either do things like we've been doing them, and what's the saying? If we don't learn from the past, we're doomed to repeat it, right? So I think the town as a whole is in a good spot to use some of this cannabis money for things like a digital sign on the highway. And again, it doesn't have to be, if you want a digital sign on the highway, you have to put it a half a mile before the exit, not right in the middle of town, right? So I don't really see that that's gonna really light up the town like Las Vegas or anything, right? But things for community events, we use I-25, and sure, all these cars coming by, they're not just gonna see a sign and be like, oh, hey, let's stop here for 3 days, right? But what if they stop for a couple hours, right? And they come through town and they have a nice lunch and they see our beautiful downtown area. Then what are they thinking? They're thinking, hey, next time we pass through here, let's make the time for a couple of days, right? Like let's let's go back to that cute little town with all that Old West character, right? So by stopping them, even if it's just to stop them for an hour or for lunch, or just to drive through and check out the farmer's market, right? And then we let our town do the talking at that point. But if they never stop, they're never gonna know. And if you're ever gonna turn this town from a gas station stop to a destination stop, it's gotta start somewhere. And I really believe that getting them to stop in the first place, even if it's just for that short little visit or drive through to check town out, I think that's gonna be very important to, to keep our local businesses successful. And so that when they do stop, it's not like this town was 2 years ago when I moved here, right? 69% of the downtown was vacant. So.
I have a great suggestion, or maybe, for you to consider. What if we added under section 14-19 exemptions, signs, added 10 signs erected by the city?
What now?
As an exemption?
Signs erected by the
As an
city.
exemption?
Would you state that?
Under section 14-90 exemptions, we could add 10 signs erected by the city. And this kind of falls in line with the community input that we heard in regards to having, promoting the entertainment district and tourism and having the city take the lead in that. Just something that you might consider. It also would help with limiting barriers or eliminating the barriers to maybe some wayfinding that the city may set up, want to erect, maybe by the train station, or saying, okay, downtown is this way, or whatnot. So that might eliminate some of the.
So this would be a way to avoid off-premise signs by businesses, and just have one sign that's
If it's a
managed by the
sign,
city?
if it's a sign erected by the city for an official purpose, then that would really ensure that that sign does have the public, interest at heart. It's really for community as opposed to like a private business. Now, with that being said, with I-25, it's a state highway. CDOT is obviously a player in allowing that signage. So we always need to keep that in mind too. If the city did want to put a sign on I-25, there are some requirements that CDOT has.
And I think that's a nice compromise too. I mean, you're gonna have a bunch of businesses out there, like, hey, I wanna put one up, people want one up. Well, maybe, so now we've got this community sign. I mean, maybe, you're still not able to advertise for your specific business, but again, it's about getting the traffic. And then once they're
the
in
district
town,
or an event or.
now you've got them. It's gonna increase businesses across the board, which I think is what everybody wants, so.
I think there's gotta be a consensus someplace to be able to, the comments we've had here are very good comments. I appreciate each and every one of you for making them comments. But, I think we need to make sure that we don't go off the wrong way and be sorry for something that we did. We have to be very careful with that. And that's why it's so important to get these comments. But there's gotta be a consensus someplace to where we can make it work for everybody and not mess it up. I'm with you. I don't wanna see a bunch of Vegas signs, but trying to put one big sign up to say what's happening in the community, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. But I would have a problem seeing a bunch of them down the I-25. I just can't see our city becoming that type of a business. I think if we could put a major sign that shows all the different things that are gonna happen throughout the community, and
And how do you get all that stuff on there? I don't know, but there's gotta be some way to work that out. And I don't wanna make a mistake. I don't wanna vote for something that we're gonna be sorry for.
Well, you're talking about two signs, you gotta have one facing north and one facing south. I think it's a little dangerous to go off, to go on the hypothetical route of how much value that's gonna be. I think we might be placing too much importance on a sign saving the city. It's a little bit of a fantastical notion as far as I can see. I don't think, I just don't see it as a savior for our economy.
Is it not worth trying?
But, well, I don't think there is, I don't think a signage is the root of our, a lack of signage is not the root of the city's problems. We have no industrial base to speak of. We have difficulty attracting retirees because there's a perception that the hospital isn't first rate. We have difficulty with an industrial base. We have a lack of jobs. The population in the city went from, 12 to 14,000, maybe around 2,000, down to 9,000. We lost 25% of the city. That's not because we didn't have appropriate signage. Santa Fe doesn't have a bunch of signs on I-25 driving people off the freeway, and they're not on I-25. Santa Fe has created a city with this base of a population of artists and reasons to go there, first-class restaurants. That's what we're working towards, with space to create, with all the development that's happening, with the condos going in town, that's gonna attract people that wanna live here. With trying to get something that's not a boom and bust, like coal or, natural gas. If we can build all of those things, I think we stand a much better chance than, I agree that I-25 is a great resource. I think our greatest resource is this collection of historic buildings. That's the highest concentration of historically significant buildings from that era in the state. That's what we can play on to keep driving people here. And if you're expecting to see people imagining Wyatt Earp walking up and down the streets and there's big illuminated LED signs behind them, I think that really cuts into your photo op. There's a way to drop people in off the highway with a sign, like you're suggesting, city-owned, but opening the door to this, and then maybe especially with the CP process that I'm not totally convinced is the right way to go about it. There's got to be another way. I'm super sympathetic to all the business people that are trying to make it a go over here, and I don't want to be the naysayer to that. I don't think that businesses are failing for a lack of signage. Like Jamie pointed out, he's put up the same sign on 5 buildings, and it wasn't that he didn't make great signs for them. It's the
But again,
city
we're
wasn't
not talking
doing it.
about like industry here, we're talking about tourism, right? Like, that's what's gonna keep a lot of these businesses open, is tourism.
The same sign is not gonna make us a tourist destination. We have,
If anything, if we overdo it, we're gonna diminish the quality of the
I
tourist
agree with
experience.
Kerry, we're building, although there's been a lot of discussion over the years, we've never come up with a Trinidad brand. But if you look at the True West magazine, we're one of the 10 True West towns, or whatever they call us. We've got historical things that we don't take advantage of, the Santa Fe Trail. We don't, we've got to be building our tourist base on something besides LED signs. There's got to be something else here. to
Wait, I
attract
don't think anybody's saying that we're gonna build our tourism around a sign.
Right.
But to think that it's not a tool at our disposal, I think is.
Well, I think there's too much importance being put on
And
that.
I'm sure somebody's done studies, right? Somebody somewhere has done a study saying, hey, this sign, and, weren't you saying, I mean, you'd have somebody come in and actually do these studies for us,
They
right?
did the one for Cooks.
I mean, they could actually say, hey, your downtown traffic will increase by 10% with this, or 1%, and then we could say to hell with it, right? Pardon my language, but I think that this is something that we can look at and actually say, hey, here's some empirical data that shows that this will help your tourism, and tourism is gonna help this town, no matter if cannabis or coal or whatever is here. I mean, tourists is gonna drive the small businesses in this town.
But once they come off the highway, there has to be something here. And right now, we're still developing that. We've still got all the vacant buildings we've ever had. they're now owned by somebody, but nobody's doing anything with them. That's the process that has to
Chicken and
happen.
egg.
Son?
Just chicken and egg, but if people don't come, the businesses aren't gonna be successful, they're going to go away. So I think getting people to the town is gonna snowball the success of the small businesses, and you're just gonna have more businesses coming to town and being able to maintain enough income to stay open.
Your opinion?
Okay. Tourists, I think, can always come to Trinidad. I think we've always had tourists in this town. I think it's one of the main things in the summertime, maybe not so much in the winter. There ain't that many people traveling. I think that on I-25, probably the population is down, traffic is down during the winter. But it is a driving force for the city of Trinidad. I'm gonna go along with Mr. Moderano and Mr. Pritchard. I don't want to see Las Vegas signs all over Trinidad. There has to be some kind of a mutual agreement or a mutual sign that everybody agrees on that doesn't detour people from coming to the town.
I got a lot of, comments to say on this. For one, I want to really thank you guys again for coming out. My opinion is, I love the signs. If these guys will say anything, I was one of the ones at the beginning that I want digital signs on all sides of this town. I go on road trips twice a year. Every time I go on a road trip, I end up in a new town doing a new thing I would not have done because of a sign that I see on the side of the road that pulls me off. And some of the nicest towns I've ever been into, I would not have stopped if it wasn't for the sign that I saw off the highway. This town, I have been raised here, born and raised. I've been here my whole life, except for the stint that I've been up in Denver to build my career. But I've seen this town die. I've seen buildings fall down, and I've seen what I fear. Tony, you said something. You said you would be sorry for something that we would do. I look at it the other way. I would be worse and feel sorry for not doing something, for not taking this opportunity and saying, hey, we aren't going to have weed here forever. We better capitalize on the next 5 years to make this a tourist spot, not just for a short period of time, but forever. And, bring in this outside money that people are cruising right up to Denver and Springs. And I guarantee you signs will get them off. I have buddies, they drive through here. They called me up one day and what's going on? They didn't even know something was happening in town, and it happened to be the Blues Fest. There you go down to the Blues Fest. You called on a perfect day. They had no idea, except for they called me up and I told them for something to do. And that's something that when they're driving down this I-25 corridor, we should be pulling it off, because I'm gonna tell you, this town's gonna die if we're thinking we're gonna kick around the money that's in this town from person to person. We need to get this money flowing from outside this community into this town. And to me, I think one of the things we could do is, signs nowadays look good. I think we have a big scare of these signs, but I think we could do it tastefully. I think we could do it right. And I know everybody says we don't want to be like Vegas and this and that, but everybody seems to want to go to Vegas. It's kind of funny. I mean, and everybody don't want to be Denver, but they're going up to Denver every weekend to spend their money. I mean, so
what are you talking about, signage?
To me, like I told you in the first time, if it was up to me, I'd have a sign right there at the bypass, first off on 350 coming in. I'd have signs north of town and south of town.
What sign? What do you mean sign?
First off, the city sign, right there to start with. 3 city signs to start saying, hey, farmer's market today. Hey, this month we got the holiday scare downtown from this time to this time. Please stop in and check out the spooks in Trinidad or something like that. And somebody might get off the highway and say, hey, I'm gonna go down to Bricks, have a hamburger, and then at 7 o'clock go do the haunted tour. And then I'll go to Springs after that. But without them knowing, they'll just keep on going. And again, I look at, there's, again, we could really make this town where it's a destination forever. And I feel we are at that point where we could save this town. So, I'm for it. But I wanted your guys' opinion.
What exactly?
I'm for signs. I'm for electronic signs. I'm for it all, in my opinion.
In the Historic Preservation District too.
I think you could limit, I personally, You know, I think the historic district is gonna be a little bit tougher area, and I think you're gonna have to limit that on the electronic signage, but, you know, I think anywhere as far as on the I-25 corridors, we have to. I think if you're outside the historic district, I think it should be pretty easy to get a sign
Are
out.
you saying that then you think Walmart, Wendy's, all of the hotels should each have a digital sign on the highway?
If they wanna have a digital sign and replace their fluorescent light sign or whatever, to me, it's America. And, the newer the sign, the better it looks to me. And I think it's time to get out of this idea of trying to hold Trinidad back and keep it a small, tiny town, because what's gonna happen is, you know, like for instance, we're all gonna get old, and if there's not a hospital to take care of us, I don't think I'm gonna even be here to die, because I'm not gonna be able to get taken care of. So we gotta make sure that this town's gonna have a livelihood for the next 100 years, and something that's gonna go past a 5-10 year lifespan with oil booms. Who knows what the next boom will be. Again, I wanna make it clear that I am for if we do them right.
If we do them right, I
agree too,
think
but-
certain spots, you know, I don't wanna, you know, I'm with you, okay? I don't wanna see downtown historic district filled with a bunch of digital signs, because that's not this town, right? But I think we can find a way to use technology to get people into our historic
Okay,
district.
so
gotta have-
so this whole conversation is not about signage downtown, there's signage on the highway. That's
about
what this
signage.
whole conversation is about, right?
To me, yes, that's where I
And
stand.
everybody else, it's signage on the highway. We're not discussing this.
Not to me.
To me, signs on the highway is signs, part of it, right? Am I not following that?
So then it goes back to the discussion of, if we have a city-owned sign that, so that we don't have every off-premise sign up and down the highway?
I think that's a great idea.
Or does everybody want 42 digital signs on the highway?
No.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's calling for, you
42
know,
signs. no.
for a Las Vegas Strip looking highway. I don't think anybody here wants that. I think that what we're trying to do is figure out the best way to use signage in a limited capacity and still get a lot of value out of it.
So what I was hearing is the signage along the highway was more for promoting tourism and bringing people into the community. I think everybody wants to bring people into the community. Does the suggestion of exempting city signs achieve that goal? Because what we need as staff is we need direction from the commission, and we're going to put that in a resolution, and that needs to be recommended to council.
Well, I don't.
So we need to have whatever the regulations are, what your changes are, what you recommend changed, and take that to council.
Well, I
So we need
don't think
consensus.
that now is the time to decide that. I don't want to, I'm with Tony, I don't want to make that decision now and have you take it to council and be a done deal. I don't think there's enough consensus, I don't think there's enough discussion. So no, I would not recommend that we take it to council to exempt the city until we come to some more consensus on this.
Well, I think one of the challenges is that the city's exempt from their sign code as it is, as a governmental agency, just like the county would be.
Carl, can you please come up?
I'm sorry. Well, the city in land use codes are exempt from their regulations as it is. They don't have to comply, they don't have to fill out a variance to get a sign permit, they don't even have to fill out a sign permit.
We do. We do.
Actually, they don't.
No, we do. We have to follow the regulations.
You're saying that a governmental agency has to follow governmental agency rules and regulations?
The Trinidad Police Department had to do a sign permit through Mr. Breelove's business to put that sign up. Space to Create had to do a sign.
Los Angeles County doesn't. Los Angeles County is exempt from the city's sign rules and regulations.
Everybody's different, every community's different.
No, what I'm
so-
saying is governmental agencies are exempt from applying for other governmental agency rules and regulations in Colorado. So the city of Trinidad has a rule and regulation for signage. Los Angeles County, if they're putting one up, doesn't have to do it. The city of Trinidad is the same way. They're already exempt from their own rules.
That
So
doesn't make sense.
Well, it's state law.
Well, are we talking about properties on the county now, or are we just?
No, what I'm saying is that the proposed regulation doesn't change anything. It's there right now.
Except that the city did apparently have to apply for some.
I think staff is disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna do the research, Commissioner Pritchard.
And actually, they're the ones that we follow.
We'll do the research. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. We'd like to address Mr. Pritchard's concern. You know, part of this process is updating the code, and this is one of many issues we're gonna be talking about related to zoning subdivision. So we wanna be sensitive to the statement that you made, that you might not be ready this evening, but this is our second public hearing on signs. The city council is expecting the commission to make
This is our first
recommendations.
discussion, though, about these signs on the highway, and not our second, but our first.
Our third discussion.
Yes.
About these same signs, same
Yes,
issue?
I
The
believe the
last
chairman
meeting
is
and then the
agreeing.
meeting before that.
So where we are is at some point, staff needs direction from the commission on whether to include that exemption, number 10, for
City signage.
city signage, and we will research Mr. Gabrielson's point. And then the separate question that we need direction on is on page 5, at the bottom, where Ms. Eckhoff brought up the electronic message board CUP process. So that is completely separate issue from the city having a sign at each end of at each entrance to the city. So we need direction on first, the exemption that would allow the city to put up signs. And second, then the idea that electronic message board signs could be gained by conditional use permit. So these are for individual businesses to bring forward CUPs. And the direction we need is a yes or no. And if the answer is yes, then we need a direction, do you want to limit that in some way by zone? In other words, do you want to
Yes.
limit it by zone?
Yes.
So those are, I think, from what the community brought forward. And then I believe the other things that Ms. McCool was looking for is, do you like this idea of this creative sign process? Encouraging creative signs in the creative district? Was there, Ms. McCool, were there a couple other points that we were looking for some feedback on?
Yes, on wind-driven signs.
Temporary signs.
The
that was it.
temporary signs, yes.
So we need temporary signs,
Right.
the creative signs, and then this digital
Can you give us
question.
a reference to that wind-driven sign, what page is it on?
So wind-driven
Is
signs,
that the,
Page 9.
they are on page 9. And per city staff, they are currently listed as prohibited. And we really need to reconcile with the PZDC and direction on if you want, well, we need confirmation that you want to prohibit them, or if you want to allow them for a limited amount of time. And if that is so, is it 30 days, is it 90 days?
Is it 10
is
days and then
45
so.
days, is it whatever?
And the reason we're bringing this up is when we drove around and did an inventory, we see quite a few wind-driven signs. So while the development team at the staff level recommended to Ms. McCool that those be prohibited, planning staff is saying, yikes.
are you
If you
talking
want, are
about
you
those
sure?
feather
Yes,
signs?
Yes.
And right now, as the regs are included in your packet, we have limitations on temporary signs. And that's when we get a limited amount of time, and that means it's a temporary sign. So in the regulations, we need to say, what that time period is. So
How long is temporary?
how long is temporary?
And how about,
And that has to come from yous.
So
You know.
Chairman Fabic, do you want to organize these conversations around each topic?
Yeah, I
So we
would.
can get some consensus?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And,
Where do you
know,
want to start?
Let's talk about how long we want a temporary sign up to start with. You know, I mean, we look at it, you know, the gentleman who came up and would have his thing going on once a month, you know, the first week of the month. Personally, I would like to have a little bit of flexibility for that kind of gentleman where he's allowed not just a month, but let's give him a days. So he could, you know, he would come to you and say, hey, I'm gonna put it out for 1 week at the beginning of the month for 4 months, and there's my 28 days that I'm gonna use my temporary sign, and that's what I plan to do with it.
28 days, no more than 10 consecutive.
Or a month, you know, 31 days. You know, I just think we need to be able to break it up for that kind of situation, because when I see, you know, temporary signs, that's really what it's for. It's like that guy who's trying to get his business known in the beginning. Hey, I got kind of an open house, or, you know, come in, check
Is that
this
a
out.
temporary
sale?
sign,
the sales?
annual,
Per time that they fill out the permit?
Yes.
Speaking strictly
or
of
they can
driven
come back to the
temporary
next
signs here.
week?
No.
In another 30 days?
Only 1 year. You have only one sign per year is the way I kind of look at it.
Well, right now, it's a max of 2, but
Yep.
Max of
Is that for
of 2
realtors?
temporary signs per calendar year, but I think what Chairman Fabic is talking about.
Break it down more by days.
It's
so
days
then-
as opposed to,
Take out the number of year and then say I had a business I could bring forward 3 or 4 or 5 times.
You know,
a
like
temporary
4
sign.
weeks a year or something like that, that we could actually put out that temporary sign.
If you took
you
his
know?
case as an example, he's talking about 5 days a month. So basically 2 months
Mhm.
a year, but at no time any more than 5 days consecutively.
Yep.
So we could come up with some number like 2 months in a year that you can have the sign, but no more than 8 days, 7 days consecutively or something, and then you put that restriction that it's not.
And then it's.
That it truly is a temporary sign managing specific events.
What about a sign that a person is building, like for instance, Toyota was building, and they had signs on a fence and stuff like that? Is that temporary as well?
that's an
That was-
That's an off-premise sign if it's on somebody's
It's a banner,
fence.
that's considered a banner.
Yeah.
The coming soon sign kind of thing, or something.
More like, you know, a contractor, you know, like they do, this building was built by Morton Electric or whatever, you know what I mean? They usually put it out on the job site for a month or whatever. But I think it's just a temporary.
I personally think with a temporary sign, it should be temporary, right? I think 90 days is too much. I think really the lower that we can get away with, the better. I mean, I would personally vote for somewhere around 30 days. And again, there could be a clause in there that if it's not up permanently for 30 days, you know, you get 30 days of the calendar year, no more than so many days at a time. But even for, you know, because a lot of people are going to use these, like, why are they being used, right? Grand openings, et cetera, right? You don't need that more than 30 days. You've been open for a month now. Take the sign down.
Yep.
And that should allot ample
Yeah.
opportunity to draw
To get your
people into your
business out
store.
there, get the.
So
To get the
one
visibility.
sign per 30 days?
So I'm saying, no more than 30 days.
But you, to me, again, I like the fact that trying to put in a clause,
Right.
like he was saying, you know, where we could break it up, you know. If I wanna use my 30 days and, you know, one week every quarter,
Right.
you know, I mean, I look at it as my business, you know, we have different specials that will run, and a lot of times, that's how I run it, where this week here, throw out the banner, and I get that 1 week of use on that temporary sign. And then I get my fall sale and do my another, you know, 1 week out there, whatever.
Then we
So
gotta
we
find a way to
already
enforce
have,
this.
don't we already have a 45-day?
Yeah, we're thinking of reducing that. We're talking about.
Only having it to 35.
To limit
or
to 30 days.
no.
So the proposal we have right now on page 11, item C, temporary sign permit sign standards, is the city shall use the following standards to evaluate a temporary sign permit request. 1, an approved temporary sign shall be valid for 30 days from the date of approval. 2, one location may display no more than one temporary sign at a time. For the purposes of this section, location means the area in which the business is authorized to be conducted is set forth in the approval. City business licenses for such business or a total lot area of a lot used for residential purposes. So in other words, we're gonna strike that maximum phrase there. Number 3 and number 4 continue to be read as they're presented.
Reducing the 30 days. and taking out
Reducing the 30
surplus.
days,
Yeah.
but it doesn't limit you to the amount of time. So if you have a business and you wanna come forward 6 times a year, as long as you fill out the appropriate permits, you pay the appropriate fees, and your sign conforms with the code, then you can come forward as many times as you like.
So you can have, so that's.
Use that 30 days.
So that is, what happens with that scenario is that every 30 days, you're gonna get a new sign permit, and then you're gonna have a permanent sign, because it's every 30 days.
No, Lou. So you say, you're striking it, it says two temporary sign permits per calendar year. You're changing that to unlimited temporary signs?
We struck that, the example that Mr. Kirby brought forward is he would come forward every month and fill out his temporary sign permit so that he could put his banner up, which would be up for 5 days prior to his event. His event would happen. He would come forward the next month and put in a different temporary sign permit. As long as he comes forward and pays for his temporary sign permit, he could put it up. Ms. McCool's example was saying that the way you would game that system is you would just come in and put your sign permit for the same sign every 30 days and keep your temporary sign. So if you had a coming soon, you would come in and you would have 30 days, and then you would come in on the 31st day and put in a new sign permit. Keep the sign up and then come in the 31st day. Is that what your example was saying?
I just wanna make the understand the
We need to
ramifications.
make sure that that's not in there.
Right, and so maybe Chairman Babick, what you were getting at, we need to flesh through a little bit, whereas for per quarter or what, or I don't know, you were saying.
It seems like we're setting it pretty clear though. I mean, 30 days for a whole calendar year is what you got max for that temporary sign.
Oh, for that whole calendar
For that whole calendar year. I mean, it seems
Okay.
like it's a defined period of time.
But I
Okay.
think what the gentleman was talking about is Art Trek Week during the summers. He would like to advertise the Art Trek first Fridays, that the merchants are open every Friday. And I think that's what he would like to advertise. So we don't advertise that much, but he wants to put a sign
Correct.
out on his door to advertise. That
Could
is
you please come up and
April,
speak?
Yeah, you gotta
May,
please-
June, July, August, and September, 6 months.
Please come up next time, but
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry.
still,
Okay.
what's going on, he could still come in with what he wants and still get his temporary sign for that time period. With what
It's
we're
just,
giving him.
so 30 days for the whole entire year,
Yeah.
he could do 2 days, 1 and
I
5
could do
days here.
15 days one month
15
and then
days,
6 months
and
later,
then-
15 days.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
We just have to find a way to enforce it.
Are
Okay.
you concerned at all with putting that limit, that you might be saying, hey, you can only market your event for 30 days in the
No.
year? Are you?
I think again, it's temporary. It's a temporary sign. You know, I, for instance, in my business, I have a sale that runs for 3 months. I mean, I would be okay with advertising it in the peak time. As a business owner, I say, when's the best week for me to do it? Hey Tara, let me do my sign for these 2 weeks of that time period. I mean, to me, it makes sense, otherwise, the word temporary, we might as well throw out. And I think anything past 30 days is not temporary. So. Anything else? How, can we ask the public on how they feel about the 30 days?
Sure, you're
I mean,
running it, you're
what
running
do
it,
you-
just have them come forward.
How do you guys feel about, temporary signs for a 30-day period, and, you'd be able to pull permits for when you want up to those 30 days?
collected annually for 30 days?
Yep.
That's what I'm understanding.
You'd only get it 30 days. After that time runs out, you don't get a bank the days or any kind of that kind of stuff. You use them or lose them.
Well, it says in what we have now, you can apply for 2 temporary sign permits per calendar year. We're gonna cut that to 1.
We're letting them have the freedom of how many times they want to do it. And instead of having it where 2 times for a total of 90 days, we're saying we're giving you the freedom, but you only get 30 days a year instead of 90 days. So to me, we're reducing the total time, making it a real temporary sign, but at the same time, we're giving them the freedom of when to do it.
I think it's good.
It sounds extremely difficult to enforce.
Yeah, I agree with
Yes.
that.
But Tara, when they do the sign permits with you, right, isn't that's gonna be the process, right? You guys are gonna make sure that, hey, after a week, they come down?
It would be, so I'll use the example Ms. Campbell brought up for the art trek. So there's 5 art treks. And so the idea that I hear the commission saying is they would like art trek to have 30 days at which they could advertise. But what if Ms. Campbell comes forward once to do the sign permit, and then Ms. Atkinson comes forward the next time, and then, you know, Kenny comes forward the next time? It becomes a tracking issue for city staff.
For city staff, it doesn't, excuse me, but we also want to advertise in the Christmas.
Please come up.
We,
State your
my
name,
name is
please.
Camilla Campbell, and I have a shop downtown. And we do art track, starting in April, May, June, July, August, September. And they would like to advertise. What happens at Christmas time when I want to advertise that month of Friday? We're open every night. Does any of you know that we're open every night on Friday night? Does any of you know that we're open every Friday night for art track? And we advertise. And then you're saying that in December, if the merchants could come back and ask for a permit, we've already used our 30 days, like we can't advertise?
Well,
To
wait a
me,
minute.
it seems like the art track would be almost something like the city would advertise, right? If they had their city sign, if it was something like that, I mean, are these private businesses and?
We are private businesses trying to stay open on Friday night.
So let me ask a question.
Would have to be.
Does Art Trek apply for the permit as an entity, or is each business apply for their own temporary sign that participates in the Art Trek?
So right now, one of the things staff is asking for is some sort of parameters for temporary signs because the current code doesn't allow them, but you see them everywhere. So we have no way, we have no rules related to temporary signs. So we're asking for you to create some rules.
Let me
related
ask
to
another
those.
question that's been brought up a couple of times.
Thank you.
We're gonna have a temporary sign that somebody can put out for 2 days or 4 days or 30 days. And this has been brought up, who administers this and who enforces the regulations? And who's gonna go down to Toyota and say it's time to take your feather signs down because your permit's run out? How is this gonna be enforced? And who's gonna, in any of these circumstances, how is this enforced?
Like, it's funny though, and I'll connect to the thing. You guys say the same thing on the temporary signs, but it's the same thing on the digital signs. You guys already got them. Like, if you guys look down City of Trinidad, you guys already got them. Look at El Rancho, they already have one. Cook has one. Some of the marijuana places have them. Like, no one's enforcing. I mean, like, really, like, what would you guys do if I put my sign up on Monday? Who would enforce it? There's no enforcement.
My question.
Yeah, there's nobody enforcing it.
So, my,
Which I think there should be. I'm definitely not saying there shouldn't be. But I'm just saying, there's nobody enforcing no codes in Trinidad right now on that kind of stuff. I mean, I had a sign in my building.
I agree with you, but I think that we still need a code that addresses it, whether it's easily enforceable or not, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's a state law that says you can't drive over 75. I drive like a maniac. I haven't gotten a ticket in 15 years because it's hard to enforce, right? That doesn't mean you shouldn't set a speed limit. That just means it's difficult to enforce. And it would be nice down the road to figure out some way to, increase our vigilance on enforcement, yes, but I think right now we're not talking about enforcement as much as we are the actual code.
And that comes down to council and their priorities and budgeting and increasing the budget for code enforcement with the PD, basically, right? We have vehicles parked in front yards that sit there for months and months and months, and I know that Sergeant Hadow is supposed to go get to them, and he can't, because there's just so many to get to, he's one guy. But that can't fall on us in terms of how we create the code. We need to create a code, though, that is conceivably enforceable. That's all.
And back to the temporary thing, I like the 30-day thing, but I don't necessarily agree with the fact that you can only do it once, right? As
I think,
she was stating.
in terms of the easiest way for staff would be for you to decide what a number of days would be, whether that's 10 days, whether that's 15 days, whether that's 30 or 45, and that permit begins and ends. And we don't have to then add up the second one and the third one and the fourth one to see if there's a collective number of days. I think from an implementation standpoint, if you pull a permit and we know it's 10 days, then we know, and we set a calendar alarm that 10th day it comes down. And I'm not suggesting 10 days, I'm just saying each individual permit should
Make it
be
easy.
inclusive of itself. And I don't know, it's also hard to track how many you've pulled per year. So I think, maybe something that says you can have your sign up for 20 days and then you cannot have another temporary sign for the next 30 days. It would be something that we could track. It would be that permit, you couldn't come in and pull another permit for another so many days. That would be easier to track than a cumulative.
Because I think at that point, you're gonna have a lot more work, in my opinion. I think
Right.
even if we make it simple, you got 4 weeks a year. You could use them all at once, or you could do it week by week, I mean, to keep it simple.
Well,
I
I
mean, I don't
think she's
see-
saying that is not simple, and
But-
that the most simple way is the way it's written, is that there's a time limit of 30 or 45 days. At the end of that, you can apply for another sign after a wait period of whatever.
So yeah, we could take 1 month off, and then you could go back on. So you could have a total of, within 3 months, you could be up there 60 days, and then you're done for the year.
I think they're saying that they don't want to do that, that that's too hard on the staff.
That's what she did say.
I think that having a singular permit with a singular space of time is
Singular.
much easier to track than a
Yeah.
cumulative, that a business has a cumulative number of days. I think that becomes very difficult to track.
But again, you just said, right, we would do it where they could have a month, take a month off, and I have to come back and bring another month on, and then I'd be done for the year. So really I got a total, 60 days a year I can use my signage. Right.
Once again, then we're tracking how many times you pull one. And I think the easiest thing, if you want to make it easy on staff, is just no limit on how many you can pull in the year. Just a limit on, you can pull one and it's valid for so many days.
So that's
So then it's
easier
not
on-
a temporary sign then, that was the very beginning
That's
of
absolutely a
discussion.
temporary sign. I mean, if they come in every 30 days for a grand opening
So
sign,
that's
you
6
just say
months.
no.
6 months of a year?
Right? You just say
is
no.
temporary?
Do you have the right to do that?
We do have the right
If they
to
come
turn
in
it
3
down.
months in a row for a grand opening sign, you say absolutely not. You've been open for 2 months.
I
End
have
of
a
problem.
question on that note.
I could have a sale every month.
In other places, it speaks to content, like, I own a building and I can't put a big sign on my building that says eat McDonald's. And this doesn't speak to content. Can I go pull a temporary permit sign that says something horribly offensive? Because you can't regulate content, I think it's important that if you're gonna put the ability for a private citizen to put up a sign for 30 days, that you speak to what that sign could possibly say.
That would be.
Then maybe we should really consider opening up the temporary sign can of worms.
Okay. So there's the point.
That's a good point.
So no temporary signs. Is the point, that's the point. Which I think, staff's recommendation was no, the development team's recommendation was no.
I'm okay with no at
Now,
this point.
would that be limited, to answer a question, by zone then?
No. We hadn't
It's
considered
just the
that.
type, yeah.
So banners,
So
how many?
banners and the
banners
wind-driven
are-
signs, those are temporary
Temporary.
in nature.
And
You get
they're
a sign back.
everywhere.
And
Right
then this
now,
summer
if
you have
you-
one, and then the next one, and back and forth, and they could be saying, that restaurant gives me food poisoning, and they say, my pizza's better, I mean, it could get
So
really
an
bad.
example is SCRT puts a sign out in front of their, in front of their shop every time they're having a play. That's a temporary sign. You'll see the Miners Memorial has a banner on it, that's a temporary sign. So we're in this conundrum where people are doing temporary signs all the time and we have no control over that. Some are done very well, some are not done very well. So our original intent was to ask the commission to have this exact discussion and make some decisions. If you want to say no temporary signs, then we feel obligated when we adopt this new sign code that we're going to be in a position to say no temporary signs. So when Cook Motors or Toyota wants to have a Labor Day sale and they want to go get all their flags and put them out, those are temporary signs. So I think there's a balance here where they're being used. Some ways they're being used correctly, in some ways they're not being used correctly. We need some parameters over how those can be used. Now-
Are we actually having problems with temporary signs?
The wind-driven signs aren't temporary, they're a separate section as it's presented.
They're right now, they're right now listed as prohibited, and so that's why we're having this discussion.
That's what I did.
Yeah,
That's why we're having this discussion.
Okay, all right.
we are, yes. All temporary signs are right now listed as prohibited. Commissioner Monterano, and yet drive downtown and there's
The
example
reason why I
15.
asked that question is because I haven't seen any of them causing any problems.
So we just need some parameters.
We just need to find out a good way of saying it's okay, that it's not okay.
I'm personally not a fan of the windblown things that are temporary signs.
Well, it's another deal about marketing, it's all part of marketing, okay?
And we can decide if we, as a city, think it's tacky.
But there hasn't been no problem, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, there's visual problems, that's the issue.
Have we had any visual problems?
Well, to me, yes, we do have visual problems. Toyota's completely surrounded by those fluttering
But
signs.
what were the problems that we've seen?
That's what the definition is. You're seeing the problem when you drive by those signs and they're.
Well, see, and I don't see the problem myself.
Okay, but that's a subjective thing.
Yeah.
Matter of opinion.
So you're saying that SCRT then would not be allowed to put their sandwich board out?
They could, we need some parameters under which they could come in and fill out a form, list how they were gonna use it, and we would approve that, and then it would be approved.
So we need to make our decision really to make sure we don't hurt businesses like that.
Right.
We need to make sure that they can still put out their signs.
Would they come to us
And-
for a variance then, and ask for specific dates that they want to put up a sign, and we could approve or deny that?
It
on a
would not
variance
come to
basis?
you as a variance, it would come to staff as a sign permit. We would take the code that was passed and process that.
But if the code said no temporary signs.
Right now, the code says no temporary signs, and there's temporary signs everywhere. And so we have a code that says no temporary signs, and there's temporary signs everywhere. So if you want to write a code that says all temporary signs are approved and there's no parameters, that would be what we're doing right now.
Or all signage is wrapped up, whether it's permanent or temporary, based on the allowable signage? And you don't want to deal with temporary signage?
The SCRT example, the way we would see that is they would come in and do one permit for the entire year and describe how they're gonna use it, describe how many days, that it would go out the day of. And then I'm not necessarily interested in getting their dates
Yeah.
of when they're going. I want a descriptive of how they're gonna use it. And then we approve it, and as long as they're using it under those manners, then we've got approved temporary signs.
So this code doesn't necessarily need to say how many days.
It doesn't have
Just
to.
come in, fill out the sign permit, we'll allow it or we won't.
I do think you wanna say a maximum amount of allowable days.
You have to say
Okay.
what the
Maximum
time
is.
frame is.
All right.
So that you don't have a coming soon in 4 years.
So, yeah, okay.
But, you know, when it comes down to, you're giving an example of FCRT. They've had things over there that's supposed to run like, for instance, maybe 1 week. But they have so many people that didn't come and they want some more. They run it another week. So what are you gonna do, tell them they can't advertise that for that amount of time?
Commissioner Leone, what we're suggesting is they would come in and fill out a permit to describe how they're gonna use it, but not put any dates on there.
Okay.
And the way they would describe it is say that, the weekend of their production, they'll put it out in the morning when they open and take it down at night when they close. And then that becomes Tease Me, Treat Me's the same way, that they would describe how they're using their sandwich board. A Toyota would be the same way. They would come in and say, when they're having a sale, advertise, they would put, this is how they would handle their temporary signs. And that they would take them down then after the sale, and they would be up 5 days before or 7 days before. What I think we would need from the commission is a maximum amount of time that you never want to see a temporary sign more, and then we'll approve. They'll tell us how many days they're gonna have it, and we'll approve it based on their application.
And at least then we have some teeth or some mechanism to enforce
Staff
the
to go
signs
out
that
and
didn't
say-
come to get a permit, and all the signs that are out there without a permit.
Do you wanna do 90 days? I mean, that's what they have right there, 2 45-day sessions.
I'm good with that.
I think you have to give them more than 30 days.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
You have to give more than 30
the way
days.
it's written is there's 2 permits allowable for each for 45 days.
How about if it said something like, no temporary sign is allowed in any more than 90 days?
Yep.
Period.
Yes.
That's why I like to keep it simple,
Easy,
right there.
easy.
That's right.
So we're good with content? Smooth?
We have to,
It's just yeah.
even on permanent signs though, we have no control over content.
But again, if somebody comes in, you're gonna ask,
What's on the sign?
We're good, we have an
what's on the
example of the
sign? I mean,
sign.
if they wanna draw, a big obscene picture or something, I'm sure there's a way to say no that doesn't involve their content.
Ms. McCool, can you address
Is there, is
obscenity
my question.
with the Supreme Court decision?
It's a difficult one, and we talked about it a lot at our last meeting. Really a lot had to do with art as well. And how are we supposed to evaluate what is a work of art if we can't look at the content? And so we kind of got to the point where it was all about text. Signs are really tricky with symbols and artwork and those types of things. I think that maybe what we should do is have legal have Carmen just write us up a, full analysis on obscenity.
Okay, we'll get legal opinion on obscenity and how to handle
Because,
that.
I mean, we've discussed it a lot, and so I think it'd be better just to have,
No clause in there.
Obscenity or like malicious intent, as she was saying,
Right.
somebody could,
Yeah.
Purposely be pointing out their competition in business and, so something along,
'Cause
malicious
with the-
intent lines.
it has to be content neutral, which means, we're getting at, the sign type. Whether it's a feather sign or, whatever. But having an obscenity, that's a whole different thing that gets into legal parameters that I'm sure our legal team could address in better detail.
We'll go to Ms. Beery, she's our land use attorney at MDKR in Denver, and get a reading on that. And that will inform them Ms. Eckhoff's question.
All right, so the temporary sign
So we
solution
solved that.
is 90 days per year with 1 application.
I don't know, is that what you want? 1 application, 90 days, or do you want to just say 90 days?
I just wanna say, so if we say 1 application, what if I do 2 times a year?
long as
Is
they
that
have
1
90 days.
application, is that okay, or is it, should we state it 2 applications, so I come forward with my fall sale, and I come forward
Once
with
again, the easiest thing for staff is to not have a number of times per year, just to say,
90 days.
you may fill a temporary sign permit out that no temporary sign will be up more than 90 days, period.
Per calendar year.
I think 90 days in general, so it doesn't, if it crosses December and January, it's 90 days.
Until when? Until, when are they allowed to put up another 90 days?
Only one at a time may exist, so.
So at
that
the end
doesn't
of
stop
90
them.
days, they can apply for another 90-day permit?
Yes.
Yes.
That
Well,
doesn't mean
that
that they
makes
have
it
to give it to
permanent.
them. That's the whole thing. It doesn't mean she has to grant it, right?
We have to work on,
That's gotta
on setting forth, real clear language on criteria of
What a
that
temporary
event
sign
and,
is.
and, you know, the event or, you know, whatever, cause one person might come in and say, I only need this sign for 5 days, and staff can say, okay, this is your temporary sign, it's granted for 5 days. Oh, it could go all the way to 90 days, but for what they want it for,
It's
they
gonna
only need it
dictate
for
the number of
5
days.
or for 10 or whatever.
So if coming soon, because you're opening your business in 90 days and you come get a coming soon, and then you come back in at the end of that 90 days because you've got 15 more days before your business opens, we would approve you for 15 more days and be done.
But you won't grant another 90 days after that. Clerk,
No.
clerk, correct.
And whose discretion is that? Staff?
Planning director. It happens in the development services department.
I'm okay with that. I think
Good
it's
here,
pretty
guys?
clear if we do,
We move on?
So the creative was the other thing we wanted your, and the digital. So the creative, which begins on page 15, creative sign program. This was something Ms. McCool added in response to your desire to embrace the creative aspect of what we're trying to build.
Next, what is the section, by having it here, what does it achieve except encouraging people to make signs? Does it give a,
It seems like it to me. It's just encouraging
Encouragement.
people, right? Which is, you know, it's there to try to help. It may or it may not, but we
doesn't
gave it a
change.
shot, but we're not telling anybody, hey, you have to have this awesome sign, right? Which some people can't afford that sort of thing. I don't think it does any damage by being in there at
Now,
all.
with it, along with this, because it's in the core zone district, and we're talking about artistic signs, creative signs, then we need to address digital signs within this section 14,
Within the
101.
aspect, design quality, in the contextual criteria, classic historic design style.
What now?
So you would like us to address it by saying no digital,
Well,
no
because,
LED?
yeah, because it would be in direct conflict with these,
If we can do that.
with what you're establishing
Would that
here
be
as
contextual?
creative signs.
How do you feel about neon? Neon is historic in
Absolutely
Trinidad.
historic.
What?
Neon signs,
They're 100 years old.
Neon, neon signs. There is a historic aspect to neon
Yeah,
signs within the
yeah.
district.
I'll
So-
show you
so
pictures
within-
from 1920 with neon signs, so. Should be allowed in.
But within the same size limitations as
Absolutely.
set out.
Okay. But no flashing, no graphic, and no digital LED, but neon.
Yes.
It would be very historic in nature. And classy.
Fit in with the district, has to fit in with the district.
Yes.
And it would be indirect lighting, focused lighting, is that allowable in this section?
So lit signs, Carrie?
It's up to you guys. And, this creative sign program wouldn't be limited to just the HB district. If we want it to be in conformance with the HP district, and we have that in there, but I just wanted to point that out.
I guess
A creative sign could happen anywhere.
Without having spent a lot of time reading through this, I guess what I'm worried about, I think it's great to encourage people to use good materials and craftsmanship and all that, but is there language in here that someone's gonna come forward and come up with a sign that's not in compliance with what our true mission of the other stuff was, and they're gonna point to this and say, yeah, but it's unique in design, and it exhibits a high degree of thoughtfulness and imagination. I should be approved, like it's in the code that I'm supposed to get that.
So it has to follow all of the rest of
This is the criteria, and it would need to come to you, you would be the approving body.
And then I could say, yes, it's thoughtful, but it doesn't have spirit. I mean, those are really subjective.
That's art, that's creativity,
Okay.
and
This
that's
has
the
been a
nature of
long
that.
Conversation tonight, I feel like we're setting ourselves up for some really long conversations later, that's all. I mean, and I'm wondering if what it achieves by having it there is worth possible complications that the debates that this could turn to, the arguments over these words.
It doesn't, other than LED signs, there's nothing that it disallows.
If someone comes in with a big hot dog, it's really tacky, and we have to come in and say, well, this person's gonna say it's an aesthetic improvement to the land, and then we're gonna have three of us saying, I like big hot dogs, and someone else saying, I hate big hot dogs. We're gonna have, I mean, that's this weird subjective, not based upon measurement of a sign. I mean, they're really hard things to debate. This is what I'm worried about having this language.
But they would still be under the same criteria as.
Well, you can, I mean, you can use the existing regs as the base criteria, but
It's just
a
as
lot
long
of
as
times
it's
what we've
nonsense.
seen in communities that do have creative sign programs, one of the challenges is just, as you pointed out, is that they wanna circumvent the sign regulations. And so it's a give and take. And they'd have to really demonstrate that they are creative. It's not just a bigger sign. It's not just a lighted sign, you know.
And the answer for us of why that's in here
Yeah.
was the chapter in the comprehensive plan where you talked about the cultural and historical character of the downtown and wanting to embrace that and celebrate that through our land use codes. So this was in response to that what we heard in the comp plan is that this is exactly the type of program that we wanted to see implementing throughout the downtown in an effort to differentiate and make Trinidad. And it's a tough responsibility, and that's.
It seems to me
the-
or the possibility of future discussions. That's just my opinion.
Kind of agree, I think we're gonna be opening us up for a lot of debate with that in there.
I like debate. I don't know. I'll do this every day of the week, fellas.
So what's the debate?
Whether we keep the
Whether we
creative
keep
sign program.
the creative sign program or not.
Well, it's subjective, but I think it sort of outlines what we would like to see. It doesn't, other than the LED signs, it doesn't prohibit anything, but I think it encourages what we would like.
I think a lot of it though is common sense for a guy putting up the sign. I mean, unique design, you know, imagination. I mean, anybody who's gonna be paying for a sign and putting it up in front of their building is gonna be doing that anyway. I really don't think we need to have this in there, personally.
In a historical area, when they rebuilt the front of the building, there's certain things they have to do to make that comply with the historical district, right?
If they're going to take financial incentives to do that.
But what if they don't? Even though it's in the historical area, they can't just do what they want, right?
There are certain materials that a new build or that a rehabilitation would have to follow: brick, stone, certain metals.
Could we do something like that with the sign?
Sure, it would need to follow those criteria in town, so the staff report would say if it was gonna be a large plastic, we would say the materials that are required in the historic
Exactly.
district are not being met in this application.
Exactly.
So we'd be interested in things that were fabricated out of historic metals. We would be interested in wood
Something
or
to keep it,
stone,
Masonry, yeah.
masonry,
But
things
there's
like
no
that.
design regulations that are enforceable.
In the historic district, there are new build, new construction and rehabilitation design standards that are enforceable.
So,
An example was First National Bank's project had to meet all of those criteria when it came to exterior materials.
And anything that could be used, they used,
They did.
and that was part of the criteria too.
So what I hear you saying is that your only concern with the creative process would be the evaluation that you would do seems to the difficulty that you might have in deciding
yes,
seems to outweigh the
Having that
benefits of having
section
the
in there.
program. But then I heard several of you say that you thought having the
So-
program was.
So we clearly have different opinions on this. We
Right.
Take a vote? I mean, is that how that works?
Think we-
I think at this point,
Direction.
because it's getting
Late.
late,
well, anyone, how should we go about this, the two sides, if you,
can you take a vote?
No, we'll just poll you. We're
Or
not
poll you or
we'll
whatever.
just poll you.
Yeah.
Chairman, if you could just run a poll, please.
okay.
Is this about
Keeping the program in
eliminating this,
or eliminating it out of the code.
Yeah, so all those in favor of keeping the creative sign, raise your hand.
We've got 3.
Is there 3?
And eliminating it.
Can the public vote too? I mean.
No, not the public, we need it from you guys.
Okay. Those that would like to take it out,
Okay, so we'll have to.
That's
3.
Stays the same.
Good luck with that, staff.
I
Yes.
know. So, did you vote?
They did, 3 and 3.
3 and 3, okay.
Yeah. So are there, for those that want it taken out, is there anything that we can amend about it that would change your mind?
Well, I think at this point, if, Ms. Marshall, when we forward this to council, we'll let them know that you are split.
okay?
Okay, that's what we'll do.
Okay,
Perfect.
Nice.
let's do that.
Perfect.
Okay.
That will put it off down the road.
Okay.
Digital, we're down to the 2 digital discussions. We need a decision on, some direction on, if you want to include in the exemptions, and number 10, where the city, signs may be erected by the city. And of course, we're still going
The city
to,
wants to be it, you can.
we're still gonna investigate Mr. Gabrielson's, comment with, legal counsel. We may not have to have number 10, but if we do you want it in there? And then most importantly, on page 5, thank you, Commissioner Keenan's, page 5, the very bottom, I, we need to resolve I, and if that's staying in or not.
Do we say that was limited by zone?
So those are
Okay,
2 separate
and
discussions.
can I backtrack? Ms. Beery just texted me back in regards to obscenity. She said, I'd say Reed still permits regulation of obscenity if there is compelling government interest in regulating it, and regulations is narrowly tailored to just that. Not an easy answer, but I'd say government can say no.
So what that,
With obscenities, that is in the eye of the beholder.
so what that would mean when we get something, if staff feels like it has an obscene nature, we'll forward it to Ms. Beery, our legal counsel, and get a reading, which is what we would do.
Which we would do anyways.
Okay.
So do we want to start by adding in that clause on the exemptions for the signs erected by the city? Do we vote on that first, or what would you,
Yeah, let's pull that one.
start right there?
Mhm.
And then that'll kind of lead into the LED
Yes,
signs and
yeah,
everything.
that'd be great.
Those who are in favor of the city being able to erect digital signs.
And just for clarification, this then
Oh,
satisfies the event advertising that people are concerned about? rather than specific business advertising.
Yeah, this is what I was setting forth for your consideration is adding signs erected by the city.
Period.
Not talking about digital, because I wouldn't want to limit it. That could allow
any
wayfinding. It
sign.
doesn't have to be digital. It doesn't have to be,
Yep.
whatever. But if the city wanted to erect a sign, whatever kind of sign it would be exempt.
And this would of course go out to city council too.
Well, the city would do that, yeah. So
So
this
please.
just,
So those in favor of allowing the city to erect any type of sign, those are in favor, I'm in favor.
1, 2, 4.
And 2.
Those not in favor for allowing the city to erect signs.
Okay, Wayne and Carrie.
And then
Okay, let's talk
page
about that.
5.
Page 5.
And when you bring this to city council, you're gonna make them aware of how it was voted on?
We're gonna have a work session and you'll help us make them aware. You've already done that before, but we're gonna do it
And
again.
we're gonna do it again.
Okay.
All right, so page 5.
So
Really
this
we're
gets
addressing
back at the electronic message board, being reviewed and approved through the conditional use permit process.
So there's
personally
two
think-
possible things here. There's no and yes. If it's a yes, we wanna know if you want it limited to zone district.
We've already limited out of historic district, is that right?
Well, I think we need that direction right now.
We
So the first is yes or no.
Okay, so should we just take first a vote if we want them treated, and then after that break it down by zone, or
Yes,
do
please.
it by zone
Yes.
first?
Yes, please.
Okay. Those that are in favor of the electronic message boards being allowed in town, just,
Through CP.
Be allowed in some way through
yeah,
CUP process.
allowed some way through a CUP. Those in favor? Those against?
2 and 4 the other way. So there's no need to have the conversation about zone district.
Right, it's just, it's okay.
So I will be stricken from the proposed code.
They'll be listed as prohibited.
Could you repeat that?
So
Be struck.
section I will be struck from the code, and LED electronic message boards will be listed in the code as prohibited.
Okay.
That's forwarded to council for their consideration.
That one is easy.
And then we had one other issue, was the wind driven, right?
I think we took care of that
We
with
took
the
care of
temporary
temporary
signs.
Temporary sign, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll need to go through the code and make that correct in several places.
Do we need, because this is not implemented at all, and we don't have, there's no code right now covering electronic signs, is that true? Is that right?
So this discussion tonight is only about the proposed code. So if I understand, you're asking for some guidance on electronic signs under the current code that we have?
Under the current code, do we need to ask for a temporary, ask council for temporary restriction on applications for electronic signs until this is adopted?
Are you requesting for a moratorium?
For a temporary, until council decides it, we're requesting.
Otherwise, we're gonna have applications come.
Right
in.
now, LED signs are not allowed because they have blinking, flashing,
Right.
animated,
So the-
they are
Yeah,
not
but-
allowed.
I want to
Our
be
existing
very
code-
careful with this conversation because we're getting into a quasi judicial matter. So I think we're going to cut this conversation off right now. And as I said, tonight's conversation is to be only related to the proposed code. I understand what you're asking, Commissioner Pritchard, and we'll get some legal advice. based on the requesting to council of a moratorium. What I don't want to get into is asking Ms. McCool or I to make some sort of statement about what we might do with applications that are open at this point for digital signs. Those are quasi judicial matters. Now, if the commission would like the council to put a moratorium that no further applications
That's
can be
what I-
accepted, if that's what you're asking.
That's
then-
what I thought I was asking.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were asking that any considered, so just to restate what you're asking, Commissioner Pritchard, is,
No
does
future.
the Planning, Zoning, and Variance Commission want to ask council to put a moratorium on any new applications that might come in for digital signs at this moment?
That's what I was asking.
Okay, Chairman, do you want to poll your
Yeah, let's
commission?
go ahead and take a vote on that.
Just a poll.
Who would like to go ahead and push a moratorium through to council to stop all?
Until
Until
the
it's
regulations
decided.
are
Adopted. So
Well,
we
so
have
now we're gonna be stuck with, we could potentially have to rule.
We're not gonna have that conversation,
Oh.
that's a quasi judicial matter tonight,
Right.
on what you might or might not be stuck with. I only saw 2 hands, was there anybody else who wanted to forward a moratorium to council right now? Okay, so we will not do that.
But they are existingly prohibited already. So,
Works of art, was it everybody okay with that definition as written? That limited text to the 10%?
And then the last thing is, right now, we still have a code that prohibits off-premise signs. And we've heard nothing from you in both discussions that you want to change that. So we're moving forward with no off-premise signs. And then the works of art, Ms. McCool asked.
As far as having the
I
text
like
in
the
the sign.
definition as far as.
The definition.
I mean, that's a tough one to come up with a definition for. I think you did a pretty good
Oh,
job.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay,
Great.
I think that's all that we,
Chairman Babick, I think we're ready. We're ready.
Very good.
Are you gonna combine this into something now and send us all?
We are.
Mhm.
We'll have it the 12th.
Will that be open to the public as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Just see Mr. Gutierrez if you would like a copy to review of the updated code.
Okay.
And then what we will do at our meeting on the second meeting of April, so that would be the 24th, is we'll take a look again at the updated code and make the decision on that night as to whether you're ready to forward it to council or you want further revision.
Okay.
So you will actually make that decision when we're ready to go, as when it goes to council.
And our next meeting is the 10th.
Yes, we have 2 meetings in April, the 10th and the 24th. The 10th, we have regularly scheduled hearings, we have a continued hearing, and we're going to do a public hearing on the general provisions chapters, and Mr. Gutierrez will forward those out to you again tomorrow. They're very short. I think they're 2 to 3 pages each. And then on the 24th, we will see the updated sign code after these revisions. We'll see the updated subdivision code, and we'll do any open hearings at that point. And we'll make decisions on whether we're happy with where subdivision and signs are and what the next steps are for those. Okay.
and I
What are we
have
gonna-
one more issue that I'd like direction on. We received public comment about the organization of this latest draft that you've seen. The original draft that we presented had the definitions that were very clearly definitions, and then it had the regulations that were very specific regulations. And then we heard public comment and to really go back to that way. So does the commission support going back to that?
I thought that was a great point.
Okay,
Absolutely.
fabulous.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
That was
Whatever
Ms.
makes-
McCool's
Whatever
preference,
makes this
so-
whole code easier to
Yes.
read.
Yeah.
and to
Thank
follow.
you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
I think we'd like to close this.
For that.
They're talking about LED signs. They're talking about cabinet signs. You guys say LED because there's cabinet signs that are LED.
Gentlemen,
No, like.
our last meeting with
signs.
you.